all items. This is your time to comment on any matter, agenda or non-agenda, that falls within the scope of the Billings City Council. You may only speak once on each item, though, so keep that in mind. And we just ask, if there are a lot of folks here that are to speak to the item number 4, the Animal Sheltering Services Update, to keep matters relevant and moving along, we would respectfully request, we can't tell you what to do, but respectfully request that you wait until item 4 is taken up. So with that, I'll open it up to public comment on all items. Is there any public comment? Well, seeing none, we will move straight into item number 1. Good evening.
Good evening. I will bring up my presentation and we will get going. Okay, everybody can see that okay? Good evening. I'm here kind of annually at the same time every year to go over the MPO's work program for transportation planning activities for the next federal fiscal year, which starts for us October 1st. Our current period ends September 30th. And later in the slides, I'll get into what projects we're continuing to work on this year and what projects we'll be working on in the future. This really is where we spend our federal PL, Metropolitan Planning Organization, transportation planning funds. We need to allocate that funding towards either our staffing, allocate those fundings for, it lost me. Okay, I will just speak up a little bit louder and just let me know if you can't hear me. Again, these are that provides a lot of our staffing for our division, as well as we identify transportation planning projects moving forward. We tie these transportation planning projects to items identified in the city's capital improvement program or county goals if it's a county project, or based on the city council goals for that time period. Rusty is here with me because Met Transit, with their receiving federal funds, is also included in our annual work program. So he will go through the transit processes and projects after I get done. So this is the area of which we can complete transportation planning projects. We updated our MPO planning boundary in March. If you remember, I brought that forward as an amendment to our long-range transportation plan. How we do that is we look at areas that we anticipate urbanizing within the next 20 years. So urbanizing means housing, large housing developments, large employment centers, those types of things. We're anticipating with the next decennial census that Laurel will actually connect our urban areas. So we could become the Billings Laurel Metropolitan Planning Organization, depending on the U.S. Census at that time. We're pretty close to it right now. But so this is the area where we can complete transportation planning projects in. Just a reminder, as an MPO, we are required to complete 3 documents as mandated through federal highways. One is our long-range transportation plan, which we do on a 5-year cycle. Our unified planning work program, which we're discussing tonight, is annual. And on our transportation improvement program, which is our capital funding we receive from federal highways. So like our Grand Avenue project, our transportation alternatives projects is doing the Safe Routes to School projects. Those types of things outline our capital improvements. This is not that. This is actually just what the MPO staff will be undertaking this next year. We coordinate regionally, look at transportation planning, so it's not only city, but the urbanized area of the county, which is in our boundary. PL funds support those required federal planning activities that I mentioned above. And it's the foundation for the city and the county to make those long-range transportation decisions as we move forward. Just a little bit about our funding history. You'll notice that our funding has kind of dipped. We had a little bit of a bump last year, the current year that we're in. Most of that was from a carryover from unobligated PL funding that we had 2 years ago. So under the federal program, any funding that we don't allocate through our PL program and our UPWP carries over in 2 years. So any funds we don't spend this year will carry over into FY28. Excuse me. So our total funding for this year is just a little over $1 million. We are proposing using $988,000 of that. The remaining will carry over to I'm sorry, that should say 29, because I'm sorry, we're doing the 27 UPWP. So we had a decrease in this year's PL funding of approximately $360,000. Some of that is because we didn't have as much carryover from 2025. Another part of that is that we just did recently add 2 new MPOs to the state, Helena and Bozeman, Belgrade area. So that did decrease some of our PL funding. We anticipate with the new transportation bill going forward that we will see an increase, but that has not been reauthorized yet, so we just don't know. We have seen existing PL funding decline since federal fiscal year 23. And so we have to be very strategic on how we allocate our PL funding moving forward. These are the types of projects the MPO provides in transportation planning. We do corridor and roadway studies, so like the Interbelt Loop Corridor Study, the Billings Bypass Corridor Study. We work with MDT. We're required to complete traffic and non-motorized trail counts every year. We do long-range transportation planning. Some of those other studies we do, like the Safe Routes to School. We look at trail network connectivity for our system. We are moving into more data collection and transportation analysis, and all of this involves very enhanced public involvement and stakeholder coordination. Some of the projects that we are currently working on, or we did this last year, we finalized that 2023 LRT amendment where we updated the MPO boundary. We updated our long-range transportation project list, which we now have on our website, which is really great because if you go in there, you can actually look at a project that's either committed, which is usually done through the city, or MDT have funding already in place for those projects, recommended, which are identified, and then illustrative, which are those long-range projects out around 20 years that there's no funding identified for. We finalized the 21st Street Underpass feasibility study. We are currently right in the middle of doing the Safe Routes to School, additional feasibility and public outreach for some of those projects in our Safe Routes to School plans that needed a little bit more public outreach that had to do with potentially looking at SIDs for maybe street lighting or sidewalks or additional roadway changes to enhance those safe routes to school projects. We're doing Trails for All feasibility study, which looks at 3 trail connections. That's the Downtown to Heights connection, the Alkali Creek connection, and the Aronson Trail connection. We're completing those. We are also, based on recommendations from the city and the county and approved by the Policy Coordinating Committee, completing a complete streets economic analysis. We've been hearing for years that the council and the county would like to see the return on investment and information regarding the impacts of complete streets that have on our community. So we are working on that, and you're going to be seeing that very soon. And then MPO staffing based on FHWA and MDT recommendations. We moved the traffic technician that was currently housed in city engineering because we didn't have room for them in our spaces. Since we've moved now, we have actually space for him. So we've moved him over into the planning division. So he's going to be really helping us with not only our counts, but also with our data collection and data analysis. So the priorities for this year for the MPO, as I mentioned, we have to update our long-range transportation plan every 5 years. Our last one was done in 23 to make sure we meet that July of 2028 deadline. We'll be kicking that off. What this plan will do, will identify future transportation network deficiencies. We'll run a travel demand model to look at areas that will have a reduced level of service, where there's maybe crash information. we'll be able to map that and be able to show that, which will help the city council and the county prioritize a project list in moving forward in the future. It helps you also identify funding sources and what type of investments you would like to make with those federal funds moving forward. It will include significant public outreach and stakeholder engagement. In fact, this Saturday we'll be kicking off some of that. We'll be going to the Strawberry Festival and starting to engage folks in this process. And we will primarily be doing this update in-house. MPO staff will be completing this. We did budget $100,000 to help us with the travel demand model. We don't have the software to run our model, so we will consult out for that. That will help us with that technical aspects moving forward. Okay, so just a little bit on the LRTP development process. This is just kind of how, when we kick into the long-range transportation plan, this is how we put that document together. The project list, all that type of stuff will be identified through city and county public works and city and county local government. They will be the decision makers on which projects get recommended, committed, and illustrative in that list. These are our focus areas: support future roadway planning. One of the things that we've heard about is the Monad and 36th Street West. We will be able to include this in our travel demand model to evaluate that corridor. We will be able to look at that. We'll be able to incorporate the work that Public Works Engineering has done on the transportation corridor analysis into that as well. And we'll have significant coordinations with city and county staff, and we'll be coming back to the city and the county and local government bodies for updates and information as we go along, and having work sessions and public input opportunities. The other is we allocated $20,000 to our traffic count program. This is mainly to make sure that we maintain our subscriptions for collecting that data through our traffic cameras and counters, and also to make sure that if we need to replace those, we have some funding in there to do that. And this is just a snapshot of our traffic count map that we put together every year, and it's submitted to MDT. These are other activities that we'll work on through the year as MPO staff. I'm not going to go through all these. It's up here on the screen, but we will continue our accounts. We were informed by MDT that we do have to develop a new transportation improvement program this year, a new plan, so that will be happening. We assist with city and county development review for transportation. We have the Kids in Motion program, which goes up to the elementary school and fix bikes for the kids, and managing the transportation alternatives program. So we did do some outreach. We changed things when I came on board as the coordinator. I tried to do more but more intense outreach to our city and county public works, as well as the local governing officials. I've been to the commissioners. I came to the Legislative and Local Affairs Committee to kind of go through some of this. The county and the city did provide me with some projects they would like to see us program in the future, including the city more safe routes to school projects, looking at some more of those feasibility studies, and those other things. And as funding becomes available, we will work with city engineering to prioritize those. And those are actually the types of projects we can also put in our long-range transportation plan, so that the MPO knows what we need to be working on in the next 5 years in that plan. And I'm going to turn it over to Rusty and get a drink of water. So, yeah.
Mayor, Council, good evening. Transit program's a little more straightforward than Laura's, so we'll try and keep this pretty simple. As far as wrapping up activities for the current year, the majority of our planning efforts this year focused really on that funding, sustainability, and governance study that I'll be presenting to you shortly, as well as our internal administrative activities. As far as this upcoming year, there are significant changes to the way that we're going to be categorizing our activities. Previously, we'd been identifying the majority of those in multiple activity codes, but at the request of MDT and actually FTA, they wanted us to simplify a lot of what transit's doing, because so much of our activities do fall under that administrative category. So you'll see significantly more in that admin category, and then direct costs for the planning and outreach, scheduling software, and that short-range planning. So as far as our significant lift for this upcoming year is that it's time for our new 5-year transit development plan. As indicated by the title, it is a 5-year plan that FTA likes to see us update on that cycle. Last time we completed that was in 2022, and that was the plan that directly led to the system overhaul in 2023. So expect to see more on that once we begin the federal fiscal year. That process will include some structural analysis of both the system and the agency itself. Generally, we'll have public meetings involved with that as well, and really just looking at service growth across that 5-year period. We'll obviously continue our participation in new and ongoing MPO studies and activities, including that long-range transportation plan. We will be actively developing the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Plan, our portions of it with the MPO as well. And then we do have that A&E services contract that we currently share with the airport that is coming up for renewal, so we'll start looking into that. And then updates to our mandatory plans, including transit asset management, our public transit agency safety plan, ERP, CAP, and so forth. And then we continue work on our bus stop evaluation for improvements in ADA compliance. And then, as I mentioned, those administrative requirements, including our grant management, our MDT reports, reports to the FTA, and our NTD APC certifications, sorry. So, and that pretty much wraps up MET. As far as the funding goes, you'll see that everything here is moved under that administration work element now, with the smaller portions of the planning software and the direct cost for the TDP wrapped up there as well. We do plan on doing the majority of that transit development plan in-house, just because we feel comfortable going through the process last time with the consultant, and generally we get a lot more feedback from individuals within the city as far as development of those plans go. So I'll be happy to answer any questions or you might have for us.
Thank you, both of you. You did a good job. So I think Mr. Kennedy will start us off.
Thank you, Mayor. The question I have is for Laura. When Council Member O'Donnell had asked about Grand Avenue and Central Avenue out there by 44th Street West, where is that in the transportation plan?
Thank you, Councilmember Kennedy, Mayor, Council. So currently, I can answer the Central and 44th. Currently, the county is in the process of developing a stoplight for that area and installing a stop signal for that area. The Grand Avenue project is programmed in the Transportation Improvement Plan. So that project is primarily federally funded, and the current timeline for that one is 2028, primarily because we need to, Public Works Engineering needs to finish Rimrock first so we don't bottleneck those two roads up at the same time. But they are in the process of getting those agreements. In fact, I'm working through those agreements in the memo with MAC right now, so that should be coming to you here in the next few weeks. So you will have those agreements so they can get started on the Grand Avenue project.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Geary.
Yes, thank you. Laura, this is for you too. In the slide where you talked about a $20,000 support budget for ongoing programming, like the traffic light cameras, did I understand that correctly? Because in conversations in my tenure here, there was adamant verbiage saying that we don't have traffic cameras in Billings.
Thank you, Councilmember Geary, Mayor and Council. These are not red light cameras. These are cameras that we use to capture non-motorized and motorized traffic counts. So these are not at intersections. So we have some of those downtown. We have permanent cameras downtown so that we can count. These are counting cameras, not enforcement cameras.
Mr. Lindley.
Thanks, Mayor. My question's kind of along the same lines. I know there's been conversations at a few different meetings about the potential to use some of the more advanced software similar to the Placer software. Is that being evaluated? And can you tell me where we're at with that process?
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember Lindley, Mayor and Council. Actually, we just had a meeting with MDT that Councilmember Aspenleiter gladly set up for us to look at some of the software that MDT is looking at purchasing. I have it written down at my desk. I can't remember the name of it right off the top of my head, but they're going to be starting looking at that, and they're looking at sharing it with the MPOs in some capacity. So we are tracking that. City Engineering Mac was on that call as well. So we are following that and seeing how we can advance that, how it's best financially for the city and the MPO to do that. I think having a partnership with MDT would be awesome, and I think that will be able to give us some really good information.
Mr. Boyette?
Thank you, Mayor. Laura, what it says, Monad Road, 36th Street West, included in the travel demand modeling efforts. What does that mean in English for the normal?
Sure. So we have a travel demand model that was created just for the MPO, which looks at our current, it establishes a base year based on our population, housing, and economic centers. Based on that model, it can run the impacts of those traffic to the impacts to our traffic and our transportation network. So this travel demand model that we're going to update will actually look out 20 years and to see how the increase in population and housing and economic development will impact our transportation network. We're specifically going to call out 36th and Monad as a point to focus on, just to determine what the level of service is out there now, what are the choke points, is this an infrastructure issue or is it a driver behavior issue? It will give us some information on how the city could potentially look at that corridor in the future. You're welcome.
Councilmember Nicholson.
Yeah, I would like to concentrate on safety a little bit. Yeah, you know, the dangerous intersections are the intersections with stoplights, multi-lanes from both sides. That's where people get T-boned. That's where rear-end collisions happen. That's where people get killed and severely injured to the point of disability. I would like to know if there's going to be any attention to designing our streets so that people will be able to drive more intelligently, in a safer manner. I know one council member said you can't fix stupid. And the truth is we all do stupid things on the road. So we need roads that can accommodate us who we all do stupid things. Mm-hmm. Will there be any attention to selecting intersection design so that it'll be safe for everybody?
Thank you, Councilmember Nicholson. This plan is a transportation planning. So the long range transportation plan, yes, will look at safety, will look at intersections. It will make recommendations based on that for future potential projects. We will take the information that we've gathered through engineering's transportation corridor analysis on potential ways that we design intersection and roadways in the future. But safety is a number one thing in our long-range transportation plan. So crash data information, turning movements, use will be evaluated at many of our intersections, and those will be called out that we can address.
Anything else for our presenters? Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
Laura, this is city-county planning, and when you do the studies for the county areas, because eventually they're going to likely be coming to the city soon, what type of planning are you doing for the county? Because it seems to be that, you know, they need to have more 4-lane roads instead of 2-lane roads, but it seems like all they build is 2-lane roads. So when you're doing the planning, when it's in a county area that has a lot of traffic that needs some additional work, are you recommending, or is the planning being done in a much more, I guess, a wider type road, and the county just is not building that, or what seems to be the issue with us having so much county line roads that are 2-lane, which really should be 4 lanes? Why is that not being developed?
Thank you, Councilmember Neese, Mayor and Council. So again, we approach the county every year, just as we do the city, to say, hey, we have transportation planning dollars available. What can we do for you to help? They don't do a capital improvement program, but what can we do as an MPO to help move your transportation projects to the next level, especially on the West End, where we're seeing so much growth, so much traffic impact. And up until we really have not done a project in the county. The county just has really never had a desire to have us do a transportation planning study. However, since they've had a change in the public work directorship over there with Monica and then Jay Anderson as her deputy, they are becoming more and more interested in having the MPO help them with some intersection studies as well as some corridor studies. So I would anticipate that will be happening in the future. But as an MPO, we can provide them information and planning services, but we really don't have any avenue to really direct them on how they should be constructing their roads.
Okay, so it's up to the county to determine what goes on here to be planned. And then, they're choosing not to develop the roads where you can see, or we can see, I think the city can see that there's a need to have them developed.
What I can say is they have not utilized the transportation planning services we have.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That takes us to the second item, Met Transit. Oh, that takes us to public comment. Thank you. So I'll open up the meeting to public comment regarding agenda item number 1. If there is any public comment, please come forward and take your 3 minutes. Any public comment regarding what we've just seen? All right, now we will move to item number 2, Met Transit Financial Sustainability and Governance Study.
That's a mouthful.
It is.
Do I share the screen? Yeah. Got the full. There it is. Okay. All right, Mayor and Council, good evening. I'm here to discuss the recently completed Met Transit Funding Sustainability and Governance Study. So to start out, just give you a rundown here. We'll go through the purpose of the study, review of those key findings, and then I'm sure there'll be questions afterward. But I did want to preface this presentation just to give some information. This does differ pretty significantly from what you're seeing with the airport transition going on. So Met Transit had actually planned this study 2 years ago. It's just through timing and so forth and availability of resources, we didn't execute it until this current planning year. So this is should be prefaced more of an informational document versus this is what we're recommending you do document, because there's a lot of information in here. We're really getting into the meat of this just to determine what happens when we get to the fork in the road. So to give you some background, this was a pretty wide-reaching study. We did have a extensive committee included on the review of this study, included both Met Transit and airport staff. We actually initially had Aviation and Transit Board involvement with Councilmember Pittman, who then, luck would have it that he transitioned into council member. So he continued on the study in that role. MPO and planning staff were involved. We had Yellowstone County, City of Laurel, Lockwood Steering Committee participation, Allies and Aging, and School District 2. So it was a pretty wide ranging group there that was involved in it. Getting into the reason we initially started exploring this study was really around the funding component of it. And with the recent changes in property tax policy that happened at the last legislative session, that became a little more urgent. As you're all aware of, we've continued to see significant inflation year over year too, which is adding to additional cost. which just puts further stress on the funding that's available for the transit system. So it makes it very difficult for us to even consider service improvements, service expansions, even just addressing the wage and inflation and fleet replacement more difficult when you can't put money away. So really, the funding component of it was really what started us down the path. The important thing to remember with that too is that the significant amount of federal funding that we get that comes into the area is directly tied to the urbanized area that we operate within. So as a reminder, current Met Transit funding really comes from operational revenue, local tax, and then we have some state sources as well. But significant portion of that is federal funds, and then our generated fares, parking, and adverts. So reminding council, unfortunately this year in 2027, we are looking at a significant operating shortfall, which is requiring the use of reserves. So really in that component, we're looking at what else exists out there other than the sources that we're currently using to support the transit system going forward. From there, we also started anticipating the impact of the expansion of that urbanized area. So Laurel is part of that conversation because, as Laura mentioned, there's a distinct possibility that that urban cluster that Laurel currently exists in is potentially encompassed by the Billings urbanized area by 2030, most definitely by 2040. 2030 is a could, 2040 is more of a definitive. But some of the impacts of the federal funding there is that Laurel currently operates a transit system. So what happens is that system is then transitioned into the urbanized area, which changes the federal funding source that that system is eligible to use. What that means as well is that Met becomes partially responsible for the funding that goes to that system because we're the designated recipient for federal funds in the area. So we really wanted to explore what happens when that eventually happens, including what are the needs out there that Laurel would be requesting support for, and then what are their potential local cost share sources. So to elaborate a little bit more on that, we've got this map up here which shows the western boundary of the Billings urbanized area. That currently, it's hard to see on this graphic right now, but that currently ends just east of 56th Street West. And then you can see the Laurel urban cluster is really right there pretty close to the East Laurel exit. So we're only separated by about 2 miles right now. And at the time of the study, there was 2 very large pieces of property outlined in red there that were actively being marketed for commercial development. So when the census is performed, there's the potential for an urban area to jump a low density area if it's within 1.5 miles of the boundary. So you can see there that those 2 properties definitely fill in that 1.5 mile jump radius. And further considering for any of you that drive along I-90 regularly like I do, there is already significant development past 56th Street West. So we're looking at this as a when, not an if, as far as that absorption of the Laurel urbanized urban cluster goes. So moving forward, a couple other considerations. Lockwood has, throughout the years, petitioned for transit service in their area. They currently exist within the urbanized area already. So that means the individuals, the population within the Lockwood area do count towards the allocation of federal funds that comes to Billings. The barrier to them receiving services, they don't have the local match for those funds right now. And the city of Billings is the designated urban recipient. So we felt it was prudent of us to include Lockwood in the conversation regarding any future structure into the future. So really overall in that, we also looked at what are the most efficient options for transit governance, what makes the most sense. Obviously, we exist as a city department right now. There's also structures that exist out there for a standalone transit district, and then looked at some other authority models as well. And then finally with the study, we're going to wrap up on a return on investment because that's what council has generally been asking for in a lot of the transportation projects that are being executed. So we did a basic calculation for you guys on that as well. So jumping right into governance. When we kicked off, or when we, in the initial stages of this study, we really explored what was available in Montana law that transit operation can really operate within. So we came up with 3 solid concepts and alternatives within that exploratory phase. Number one being essentially what we are right now, existing as a city department or a municipality that's operating its own transit service. Option two up there is really that urban transportation district style structure. And then option three was the establishment of an authority or a port authority in the area. Within each of those different concepts, there were then different options as well. 1A is what we are today. We operate our own transit service here at the city of Billings. Laurel operates their own transit service. Everybody does their own thing. 1B would be the potential for Met to contract those services out to the other areas that potentially are operating service now or desire service in the future. And then we carried that same concept into the urban transportation district with B and C, whereas we could form independently. Somebody else forms their own district. 2C, we sell services to them. And then 2A is really the differentiating one between those two concepts, where you actually form a multi-jurisdictional or urban transportation district. The most straightforward analog for that is probably like a school district. It doesn't necessarily follow any municipal boundaries. It's a district that's drawn out around an urbanized area and services established within those boundaries. So on each of those different alternatives and concepts, we had various evaluation criteria. Number one, is it sufficient and sustainable as far as revenue goes, including growing the system? Is it politically feasible? Is there public support for it? How easy is it to coordinate across jurisdictions in the specific model? What's the efficiency of it? How responsive can it be? Does it improve accountability or reduce accountability for decision makers? And then ease of implementation. And ease of implementation is kind of a fallacy because they're all really complicated, as you'll see as I move forward here. So within the process, I won't hover on this slide too much. We pretty much rated all of those different criteria in low, medium, and high grades, and ultimately ended up at really a short-term recommendation as far as structure and a longer-term recommendation, which I'll explain here in detail. So as we moved through these, we did ultimately end up eliminating option 3, which is the establishment of a port authority. And that's really because once you get into the language of port authority models in Montana law, they're really an authority that exists to regulate commerce. So it spells out specifically commerce. It talks about freight. Nowhere within any of the legislation does it state anything about movement of people or movement of passengers. So we felt it was quite a stretch to try and then take Met and the airport and shove it under one authority model when the way that the law is worded doesn't really support either of those existing together under a port authority. To note, you already have a port authority in the Billings area. It's Big Sky Economic Development, so also we don't want to run around stepping on anybody's toes. So really landed on option 1 and option 2 as areas that needed further analysis. So as far as the short-term service provision goes, this is it's kind of contradictory, but really what we're saying is that we maintain the status quo right now as a city department. 1B really focuses on the fact that that's the recommendation for what can happen when those urbanized areas combine together or there's the political desire to move into a different structure. So really 1B makes the most sense because, as I stated, if we were to absorb the Laurel system into the urbanized area, there's one single designated recipient for federal funds in the area. That means we're required to take on the city of Laurel as a federal subrecipient. What that means is that Met has to oversee grants, we have to oversee reporting, we have to oversee a lot of the compliance requirements with that system. So to us, it really just didn't make sense to continue operating as 1A if that happens, because there's so much of the responsibility we have to take on anyways. 1B gives us a little more control over the policies and procedures that support those compliance activities. Okay. So then moving forward, we stuck with the multi-jurisdictional urban transportation district as a long-term recommendation, really because there's still some of the same problems as you saw on the previous slide. When you're looking at 2B, where Billings could potentially establish its own urban transportation district, and then we have other transportation operations around us, it's still the same problem. There's one federal designated recipient for the urbanized area. I'm going to keep saying that a lot. So it really doesn't make sense for the interdependency or sorry, the independent operations there. And then 2C really just mirrors exactly what we can do in the short term. So it didn't really make sense to make it as a long-term recommendation because it's really just what we're doing in the short term potentially, as opposed to forming a multi-jurisdictional UTD. Of course, the biggest benefit to a multi-jurisdictional urban transportation district is the boundaries are drawn and they can encompass Lockwood, they can encompass Laurel, but you still have one entity that you're dealing with in execution of those services and one dedicated governing body that you're dealing with in execution of those services. So to explain a little bit more of the advantages of why we landed at an urban transportation district is number one, predictable and dedicated funding, which actually goes hand in hand with the transit-centric focus bullet point that's up there. Right now, you all as a city council have competing priorities for what is important to the city. You're overseeing transit, you're overseeing public works, you've got library, you've got police and fire. So when you have just a transportation district that's focused only on transit, that means you don't have nearly as many competing priorities for the funding that's coming into it. As I previously stated, there's regional flexibility in how those boundaries are drawn. The benefit in our situation, as far as if a transition were ever to occur, is that there's operations and staffing continuity. So the area has the benefit of having a long-term established transportation operation within its boundaries. There's also an increase, we felt, in some of the public transparency and accountability. So right now, again, and it's not necessarily non-accountable, it's just conflicting priorities. Again, when you have a citizen come to you with a concern, you've got 50 other citizens with concerns about different things as well. So this one, you would have a dedicated board in place that oversees the transit operation that the public would have a direct line to. And then flexibility in that local mix, determining where the coverage is going to be, how the funding's grouped in, and then the Lockwood or Laurel component. So the risks on this side, actually, complex formation is putting it very lightly. So I'm going to give you a rundown. I don't have slides over this, but really the method to form a transportation district is really a multifaceted mess of requirements. So first off, there's two ways that you can petition to have a transportation district formed. Number one is that a private citizen, an electorate, can go out and petition to have a transportation district form, draw the boundary, go around, knock on doors, and get signatures from 20% of the people within that boundary to have it qualify to go onto the ballot for a vote. So the other way is that county commissioners can directly pass a resolution with a proposed boundary that puts that question to the voters again. Either way, you have to go to the voters. It isn't just a decision that can be made by the elected bodies. The general population gets to vote on the establishment of that district if they're within that district. From there, that's just the establishment of it. You don't have any way to fund it yet. Okay, so that means you're either concurrently running a mill levy campaign with the formation question of the district, or you're running the mill levy campaign after the district has been established. So either way, you got to have 2 votes from the electorate just to get the thing established and funded. As far as the city's ability to do that, obviously we're not individual electorates that can go around and get 20% signatures. So really the only way is a direct petition to the county to establish a transportation district. And when you're forming that, there really would behooves the 2 entities that are cooperating to form it to form memorandums of understanding prior to that, because right now you own the transit system, so you want some sort of understanding that says we're going to help dictate the establishment of the board, how the assets get transferred, all of that. Okay, so it's a little bit more complicated process than what we've seen with others. So some of the other risks that go into it, obviously, you've got to balance your boundaries with service. So aspirationally, people want transit everywhere for the most part. They want to be able to have it come pick them up at their door and take them to wherever they're going, right? That's the ideal for most people with the transit system, but that's not reality for what you can execute. So when you're setting it up, you really got to balance those boundaries with the service. You still run into the same problem with levy revenue caps as far as what can be, what growth is allowed every year. And then there's some additional complication with it, right? Because now you've got a new political subdivision. There's some administrative duplication that doesn't exist right now with Med existing under the city, because we pay for IT services, we pay for HR services, we pay for administrative services. But once you transition to a district, you've got to house all of those yourself. And then there's the potential for some administrative inefficiencies if not all the jurisdictions participate. It gets very confusing about who's in charge if not all of the jurisdictions are involved in it. Ideally, in the setup of a board, you would include all the jurisdictions that are included within the boundaries. So representatives from Billings City Council, potentially from Laurel City Council, from the county commission, and so forth, somebody from Lockwood, those types of things. So ultimately, what we found out for the information that we gathered here, short term, if the urbanized areas should combine, the most straightforward process would be for Met to continue to operate as a city department, develop interlocal agreements. It sets the stage for the eventual change into a multi-jurisdictional urban transportation district, because what's not really touched on in these slides or in the study is that once Billings hits that 200,000 in population threshold, then the rules change again. So there's really should be a long, hard look at what we can do to set up that district prior to those rules changing at that population level for it. So, but again, ultimately, take this all for what you will. This is very much an informational study to tell you how do we get down that path once it presents itself. And really, right now, the recommendations in here aren't actually asking for any structural changes at this point, other than exploring that potential into the future as far as how those interlocal agreements would be set up. Okay. So moving on to funding. So we looked into a whole gamut of different funding that's called out in Montana state law. Obviously, right now, system-generated revenue is the most straightforward. That's what we generate as an enterprise fund. So we may generate fares. We have a pretty robust advertising program right now that already pulls in over $300,000 a year, and then exploring other opportunities within the area. Property taxes are the other significant portion of our budget right now that match those federal dollars that we're using for operations. And those run the gamut from our local property taxes and then some of those entitlement funds that come back from the state of Montana to the city of Billings as well. A source that we don't currently use that we did identify within the study is the use of CMAQ funding, or congestion mitigation and air quality funds. Right now, the city urbanized area gets around 1.7-ish million per year. Historically, that's been tied up mostly in the Johnson Lane bypass project that recently was fully funded within the last 2 years. So now there is a lot of discussion regarding what's going to be occurring with those CMAQ funds. There's some additional hoops for us to jump through in regards to that, because we do have to directly identify CMAQ funds as eligible for transit use in the long-range transportation plan. So right now, today, we couldn't actually go out and request to use those funds because they're not yet identified for use in it. They would then subsequently have to be approved and programmed within the transportation improvement plan. Caveat here, transit's under no delusion that we're going to be running out there requesting $1.7 million in CMAQ funds every year to operate on. But it is a source of funds that we could potentially use, say, $250,000 to $500,000 to support service expansion in the area, whether it's within the existing service area that we have or expanding into somewhere such as Lockwood that's in the urbanized area. The other method there is the urban transportation district. I previously mentioned that if you're forming an urban transportation district, you'd need to pursue a funding mechanism for that. So really setting up any type of mill levy or property tax collection that's going on for that into the future. When you're doing it, you would really want to anticipate growth of the system and future needs of the system, not just what it takes to operate today. So some of the more novel things that we looked at, including parking fees or a parking benefit district. There's really nothing that we could find that would prevent the city from setting up a parking benefit district, say in the downtown area, where you add an extra, say, 10 cents, 15 cents per hour to a meter to directly support transit. So there are some decisions that can be made there. And then street maintenance district, you're all very familiar with. So really this could really only support repair of existing infrastructure that exists. So if we have an existing bus stop or we have an existing pad, we could potentially utilize some of those monies to maintain it. One of the questions that we wanted to dig a little bit more into was just snow removal from those pads. So potential there as far as, but focus primarily on capital. And then employer and institutional partnerships, we currently do partner with Montana State University Billings for semester-long passes, but really we're going to start delving into additional partners, especially with the massive hospital that's being built down in the downtown core, exploring if there's potential for partnership there. So before I get into these recommendations, I'm going to talk about these items on the next slide. So a couple of the others that were identified, obviously, this is one that's got a lot of opinions surrounding it, but marijuana excise taxes are something that are currently collected that could potentially be utilized. The big caveat there is could, but it is a source that was identified. Arterial construction fees, really, those would focus primarily, again, on potential for capital, but that would be just building in really bus infrastructure in some of those arterials, the primary roadways, bus stops, pullouts, things like that. So really, again, just another capital source. Tax increment financing, obviously that one has a little bit more potential around it, really focusing on capital there, but it's not tied up as much as, say, a street maintenance district or the arterial construction is. There could be the potential for transit center construction with some of that, depending on where it's located in the city. And then, of course, bus stops. A lot of this stuff supports bus stops. One that requires a little bit more consideration and a little bit deeper look is the business improvement district. So really, initially, we were thinking that would likely only be a capital type of improvement to improve bus stops in the area. But there may be some potential for increased service in those areas if it were approved by that governing body for the improvement district. So say an existing district wanted improved service, say we're talking about the downtown district right now, we've got one 15-minute bus, they want a second one or something like that, there could be the potential to utilize some of that to support the expanded operational expense. And then impact fees, again, a lot like arterial construction fees. Those are focused solely on capital, but really could only support construction of the new assets. Maintenance gets a little shaky when you're looking at it for impact fees. Really, a lot of it focuses on new infrastructure. So then there was a few that were initially brought up that we did eliminate. What's used across the nation in a lot of states is a wheelage tax, but unfortunately we don't have an existing statute for that in Montana law. Franchise fees, we're all very familiar with the storied history of franchise fees in our area, so we felt that was non-tenable. And then a resort tax is a local option sales tax, but we don't currently meet that definition. So really, unfortunately, what we land at is that we have really not a lot of recommendations as far as funding transit. Other than what we currently already lean on. The Urban Transportation District is just outlined up there again because that's a potential governance change into the future. But for the short term, we're really focusing again on potential utilization of the CMAQ funding for service expansion. Again, just a small portion of that. And then really just coming to terms with the fact that property taxes are one of the only models we can really rely on for a large portion of funding for the system as far as local options go. So based again on that, whether we're moving towards an urban transportation district or maintaining as a city department, the conversation is going to come up at some point regarding if there's a necessary mill increase to maintain transit operations and growth. Okay. So as part of this, we did dig a little bit into our fares. This one was a little more informational as far as how we compare to other systems of similar size and operation. So we really looked at our structure comparisons, our base fares, what our pricing's at, and then what media is available for people to utilize to ride the Met system. We also looked at some fare cost recovery per passenger and then some variations in that local funding. So we primarily compared against systems in Montana, but then we also focused on Bismarck, Mandan, North Dakota, Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and Fort Wayne, Indiana. Similar size, similar operation sizes, Unfortunately, or fortunately for the people in the communities, whichever way you want to look at it, Mountain Line and Streamline don't charge fares for their services. They're an open system that's free to ride. So that comparison kind of falls off. But when you're looking at the other systems in the surrounding region, as well as Great Falls, comparatively, Met's actually got the highest single ride fare per passenger right now. For those council members that weren't here back when we last did a fare adjustment, I want to say it was 2018. That was actually intentional because we had a graduated fare increase approved by City Council moving forward, but the next step was to land at like $2.15 or some goofy thing. So most people don't carry around a lot of change with them, so $2 was the more convenient option for the passengers to be able to pay. As far as a day pass goes, we're very competitive, pretty much right in the middle as far as the price set for that goes currently compared to the other systems. And then monthly pass is actually what jumped out to us where we've got some room for growth. We actually offer the lowest monthly pass pricing out of all the systems. And you can see it varies pretty significantly. Bismarck is at $36, Great Falls 30, but CityLink and Fort Wayne is actually up to $54 for unlimited rides in a month. So that's really an area that we can assess a little more fully to generate direct revenue for the system. So as far as what options we have for individuals to pay their fares to utilize the transit system, we're fairly robust compared to the other agencies. The only other one that offers the same amount of convenience that we do in payment is that Fort Wayne, Indiana operation, because we accept cash on our buses. We sell paper passes at our ticket vending machines at the transfer centers, as well as at City Hall and at Met directly. We sell those to community partners so they can hand them out. We also have smart cards that can be reloaded by the public at the vending machines, over the phone, on the internet. And then we also have mobile ticketing where they can pay via their cell phone. Of note, an additional thing that's going on at Met right now is we did recently replace all of our onboard smart card readers. The new versions actually have the capabilities for open payment, so that's something that we're going to potentially explore with those. For those of you that don't know what open payment is, it's you can actually just tap your debit card or your credit card and have it charge direct there without having to go through the entire mobile app or through the smart cards. So something that we're continuing to explore right now. The thing that jumped out is for Farebox and Farebox Recovery. Now, the caveat here to this data is that it's 2024 data because the most recent information available from the Federal Transit Administration for all the comparative agencies is the 2024 reporting year. They have not yet published 2025 numbers. But when you look at the total operating expenditure to run both modes of Met Transit, fixed route, and paratransit, compared to our farebox revenue, we actually have the highest farebox recovery ratio compared to all those other systems, hovering right around 8.9%. Okay. And then with that, we'll jump on to return on investment. So we did this because it was kind of a value add that we decided to have the consultant perform for us, because we consistently hear that question from City Council: what's the return on the local dollars that we put into all these different operations? So when you get into a cost-benefit methodology, there's a lot of different inputs you can get in, and there's a lot of different benefits that you can calculate out of that. Looking at funding, expenses, your ridership per year, and then taking into consideration wages generated by the people on the system, wages generated by the system because we employ people, the taxes run in the community, reduction in vehicle miles traveled, wear and tear on the roads, all those different things. It can get very complicated. So we opted to simplify it a little bit for general consumption. We really narrowed down our return on investment calculations based on ridership and the value of the rides that we provide. So this is a little bit, I'm sorry, I'm flipping to my notes here. This warrants a little bit of explanation for the data that you're seeing up here. So primarily our weighted total annual trips, again, this is based off 2024 numbers currently because that's what was available to the consultant. Those annual trips that you see for each trip purpose category is based off of the community-wide transit survey we did in 2022 in support of our development plan. We got about 650 responses or so to that survey, so we felt it was a pretty solid data set to utilize to just determine number of rides for each of those categories. We straight up just asked the people, what's your primary reason for utilizing transit? So that's that first weighted total annual trips column. And we pretty much just focused on medical and work because those are ones that we had data to directly assign a value to. So just for reference, the work one is a lot more straightforward calculation. So average wage in the Billings area, based on the information we could find, is around $28.64 an hour. But service worker wage, which is the more likely people who are probably utilizing the transit system, hovers anywhere from about $15.64 to $22.30 an hour. We normalize that down to $15 an hour. Then you take into consideration that hopefully most of these people are working full time, so they're earning $120 a day. 2 trips it takes them, one to go to work and one from home, and you break down the value of that trip as $60. The medical is a little bit more in-depth. So this is based off of a Hughes and Cromwell study from 2005 that really determined the value of a trip based around the savings that a person can anticipate by accessing preventative medical care versus emergency medical care, and then quality of life improvements for treatment of a chronic condition that can be realized. So think of dialysis is probably the most recurring chronic condition that we support people getting connected to within the community. So through all these complicated methodologies that was then refined in 2024 and adjusted for inflation, they wound up that the value per trip of a medical ride is about $609 per trip. So significant value on that when you're connecting people to medical. So what we did, though, is we didn't take the straight up 27,000 trips there at medical and multiply it by the value of the trip. We took into consideration what's called the foregone percentage, and I apologize for the formatting on our slide there. But foregone is really only considering the number of people who absolutely would not make that trip if transit weren't available. So you can see on work, we're only considering 5% of that 201,000 people who would have not made that trip to get to work. Generally, transit's not running, somebody's still finding a way to get to work. They're riding their bike, they're asking a friend, they're doing something to get there, right? However, on the medical side, people are found to be more likely to skip medical appointments than they are to skip work. So that's where that refinement of the data in 2014 comes from, is that they determined that about, in conjunction with American Public Transit Association information, that up to 20% of people would forego going to their medical appointment if they didn't have transportation to get there, which just so happens to be something that we continually identify in the community health survey that's done here in Yellowstone County as well. Transportation is a barrier to medical care. So ultimately, you can see the two values that are calculated there for those foregone trips that are included. So when you take these against the 2024 operating cost of 1.2 million local dollars that were spent that year to support 3.9 million in benefit, you're getting about a $3.24 return on investment for that local dollar. Now, because only 2024 data was with the consultant, I did crunch those numbers for 2023 and 2025 years. 2023 was actually a little bit lower. It was about $2.09 return on investment. That was there was less federal funding coming in, so we used a higher proportion of local funds that year. And then if we look at our most recent year with 536,000 rides provided, that number hovers closer to about $2.80. So for every dollar invested, local dollar invested in the transit system, you can realize about a $2.80 return on value for that. Okay. Okay. So that's a lot of information. What questions do you guys have?
Questions for Rusty? Mr. Pittman.
I don't have a question, Mayor and Council, but I just want to thank you for all the hard work you put into this. Like you said at the beginning, this is more of a proactive report. When we started this committee, we had everything on the table. We had to just start pushing away what logically we knew about our community, what wouldn't work, and then move forward, knowing that as this growth happens, this will all be in place. So it's one of those studies or exercises that for a while is going to sit on a shelf. But as we hit certain marks, this will be a valuable tool that we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We won't have to sit for hundreds of hours going through this. We know our community. We had people from Laurel and Lockwood, because that's really what is going to be the huge driver here, which will lead us in this conversation once we start hitting those population levels. And so, while it seems like a lot, and it was a lot to go through, the final product leaves us with something that once we hit those targets will be very valuable to all of us.
Thank you.
Councilmember O'Donnell.
Thank you. On the map that showed the Billings residential area, you know, you had the circles
Yep. I can
going out
scroll back to
one
that.
and a half miles.
And then just to inform the council, we do have Bill Tro on the line from, he was our primary consultant on this as well, if there's any questions for him. Let's see. Oh boy, that was all the way back at one of the earliest slides, right?
Yeah, it was pretty early.
There we go.
There you go.
Okay. Well, yeah. From the Billings urban area to the Laurel urban area cluster, looks like that's only, according to that, like 2.5 miles.
It's about 2 miles right now, is as measured, is what
I mean, from the end of where that 0.5 miles starts, the black line starts.
Yeah, that's, I guess it's a little misleading because it's showing down the interstate, because you'd be looking at the bottom left corner of that Billings urban area and really measuring to that upper left corner, or upper right corner, sorry, of the Laurel urban cluster.
Well, how did you determine where those lines start and what is the Billings urban area? Because it seems to me that it's more than 2 miles separating Billings urban area from Laurel.
So the urbanized area is defined through the U.S. Census process. It's defined by the U.S. Department of Transportation is who defines what your urbanized
But
area
census
is.
tracts,
It's so it's based around census and density of those census tracts.
not necessarily where people are.
No, yeah, not necessarily where people are at. Some of the urbanized, it does have components of requirements for buildings and so forth, because like a commercial or industrial urbanized area holds more weight than, say, a residential neighborhood does.
Well, what I was saying is that it looked like that was, you were talking about using that as a justification for a combination.
Oh, no. We're saying that at the next census, there's the potential that the federal government says those two are the same, is really what it is. So, and that's where that conversation starts to change regarding what happens with the urbanized funding that's coming into the area to support your transit system right now.
Okay.
Okay. Yep.
Mr. Aspenlater.
Yeah, thanks, Rusty. Back to the very, very beginning when you were talking about the committee as a whole. Unless I misheard, I didn't hear anybody from the council was on that
We had
committee.
Councilmember Pittman, who
But
was
not as a councilman at the time.
like
Like when the committee was formed, why was there not a council member on that committee when there was one of everybody else, including the school?
So I don't necessarily want to throw anybody under the bus, but I reached out with questions to people higher than me and really didn't get responses back on how to engage with council on it. So then we had Dennis on board through the Aviation and Transit Board and continued with him as a council member. It's really what it is. So unfortunately, I just ran into a wall with that request. So
Okay.
yeah, so that's not really an adequate reason, but it played out that way. So, and that was actually directly, which I think is a question for council. I mean, I know we have our communication channels and so forth, but engagement on studies, we might reconsider how that communication channel works, because I know there would have been council members, like you said, that would have been interested in participating on here. So improvement in that process is definitely something we can consider.
Yeah, I don't think it's something to consider. I think it's something that has to happen going forward on anything in any department when you're doing something of this magnitude. I mean, that's a colossal whiff in this process, and it sets you 2 steps behind in trying to catch everybody up. Fortunately, Dennis is on the council now, but if he wasn't, you're talking to 11 people that are hearing all of this stuff for the first time, and the initial reaction from me is, everybody participated in this except for the 11 people that need to actually approve or take action on it.
Yeah, that's understandable.
And that's a weird position to feel like you're in right now from my perspective. So, I mean, it is what it is at this stage, but that, I don't think that's a suggestion anymore, I guess. Mr. Ifland, I think that's an absolute has to happen on things like this going forward from my perspective.
Message received. Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. And I would agree with Councilmember Aspliner on that. So thank you, Kevin, for receiving that message. There are so many questions on here because this is all new stuff. And so I'm just going to ask a couple of clarifying questions. When you mentioned that Lockwood could have their own system, but they don't because they don't have matching funding. So do we get the money and use the money, or we don't get the money, or how does that work?
So with the urbanized area, like we're talking about here in the boundaries, FTA has a formula that allocates funding to that urbanized area every year based on like population density, everything like that. All those factors are considered in the formula to determine how much money goes to the urbanized area. Met Transit since 1973 has been the designated federal recipient of that funding. It's a process you have to go through with the state at the governor level to have the designation put in place. Nobody else has ever asked for the funding. The city of Billings put together the transit system to operate transit, so we've always been the de facto recipient of that. So what I'm saying is that Lockwood is considered for the federal formula within that, but they don't currently receive service because, number one, they're not in city limits. So number two, the taxpayers in that area don't pay the local supporting funds to match the federal dollars. The federal dollars aren't just usable. You have to generally have a 1-for-1 match to use those.
No, I understand that. So does that mean that the billing share is larger because they're not matching theirs, and then we would have to, if they were to match, then we'd have to provide service for them, and our share would be less that we're getting because there's only so many dollars?
The best way to put that is they could potentially have a claim to some of the federal dollars. So it doesn't mean our dollars are, the dollars are what they are. It's based on the urbanized area. So
If
they
would
could come
have a
in
claim
and
to it,
petition.
so we would have less money.
Yeah, they could petition you for a portion of that, more
Okay.
or less.
And then same thing with Laurel. Are we getting money for Laurel and giving it to them, or how does that work with
No,
Laurel now?
Laurel's more complicated because it operates as a rural system right now. But if that urbanized area reaches out and absorbs that urban cluster that Laurel's in right now, they no longer qualify for rural funding. All of their federal funding has to shift as coming out of that federal pot.
But the whole Met dollars will go up, or the urban area will go up, and so they're, as far as the number of people, so the dollars will go up that we have to share with them.
Nominally, yes. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you. You showed a chart there of the cost of different systems around the state. I think the Missoula system, you had a cost of over $14 million, but it's a free system. Where do they get their money from?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'll scroll here. So Missoula did a pilot for Fare Free 2018 or 2019. There was significant support within their community from various businesses and other agencies that provided funding to Missoula so it could go fare free. So what they did is they built on that, though, because that's, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to get to, there we go. Wasn't sustainable necessarily for those businesses to continue to putting that much money into the transit system. So now what happens is Missoula is paid out based on what's called small transit intensive city factors. So that's the same giant pile of money that the FTA divvies out to all the different urban areas annually. But before any of that's divvied out, they take small transit intensive city funding off the top of it. It's like 4% or something of the total. And then what happens is they divvy those out in about $600,000 increments for each factor that a small urban system, so an urban system that operates in an area with less than 200,000 people, if they hit performance factors of a system that is operating in an area with 200,000 or more people, which qualifies as a large urban, they get bonus apportionments from the Federal Transit Administration. So fare free and 15-minute service that Missoula implemented caused their ridership to skyrocket. They give 1.4 million or 1.5 million rides a year right now on that system, which helps them hit metrics regarding ridership, regarding passenger miles, total traveled, regarding revenue miles, things like that. So they get, I think they hit 3 different factors right now. So they're getting an additional 1.5 to 1.8 million in federal funding annually. They also have a significantly more expansive amount of local support that is paid into the system. I think right now, last time we did a full analysis between us and Missoula, I think per capita spending per person in Billings on the trans system was around $28 per person annually, whereas someone in Missoula was around $82 per person annually that they're paying in the system. So they've got a grand total of, I think, almost 30 mills that support their system. So,
And what about Bozeman?
Bozeman actually just transitioned into an urbanized system with the last census, so they're still getting their feet underneath of them. So they actually went out and passed a referendum to establish their urban transportation district and their funding all on the same ballot. So as far as what their revenue is, I mean, this is based around the 2024 numbers, so that doesn't accurately reflect what they're actually getting in urbanized apportionment now. Because back when the 2024 numbers were up there, they qualified as urban, but they weren't completely set up at that point. So Bozeman's more of a question mark that I can't directly explain to you right now. Okay.
Councilmember Kennedy.
Thank you. I would like to follow up with a couple of things. One is with Councilman Aspenlinder on the representation. Since the money that we have right now comes to the city of Billings, our representation from the council should be on any type of expansion or whatever, or not going forward with it. But I think that I'm glad everybody made a point of that and looked at that. But the other thing that I wanted to look at is on the page that you have up there right now, Rusty, is since the city of Billings operating expenses 6.7 million, and we're looking at Fort Wayne, Indiana at 18 million. Very little is from their revenue. So a lot of that has to come either from sales tax or different areas. If we're going to expand ours, there isn't any surefire method to bring in more money from outside entities to expand our service. It would also increase what it would cost people in the city of Billings. How do we actually balance that and convince people that they need to put more money in to expand their service outside of the city of Billings?
Well, we've done some work towards that. Obviously, with the overhaul that we've done, ridership's grown significantly since that 2023 overhaul. It's grown 70%, and really have made no bones about the fact that the system was terrible and inconvenient before we overhauled it. It's hard to convince people to support a system that isn't usable to them. It doesn't provide the necessary transportation that they need. So really, I think it's continuing to build, number one, off that momentum for service within the Billings area, being responsive to the requests and demands of the public. Obviously, we still get a lot of service expansion requests. I think I had an email here recently regarding Sunday service, which I put some pricings to as well. But really, transit's a little bit different animal when you think about it than asking people to vote for, say, expansion of funding for police or fire. You vote for those in hopes that you never use them, which I'm no offense to those men and women that serve us, but no one has a desire to call the cops most of the time, and no one wants to call the fire department to put out the house that's on fire. But transit's something that somebody can vote on and immediately realize an impact on. Because generally, even if you don't use transit, you have encountered someone who uses transit, you know someone who uses transit. It's getting your neighbor's kid to school. It's taking your cousin to dialysis or to a group home day program, things such as that. It's a very widely impacting service. But regarding expansion beyond city limits, that's where that discussion regarding some sort of interlocal agreements would really have to come into play, because it's not up to the citizens of Billings and being taxpayers for the city of Billings to support services outside of their boundaries. So that's where Lockwood, with that slide at the beginning where they don't really have a local funding source would have to determine how they're going to provide that local funding to provide that service out in their area. Same thing goes for Laurel. They've got very nominal local funding right now that matches that 5311. But if you're looking at expansion outside of current city limits, it's really up to those other jurisdictions to come up with the cash flow to support that. Did that answer your question? I apologize.
It did.
Okay.
It just is going to be a tough sell for outside the city limits.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. Rusty, on the urban transportation district funding, you said they have to be a ballot measure for mill levy. Is there any other option as far as a instead of having a mill levy based on the value, like maybe square footage or street frontage, like some of the other? Is it has to be placed on the value? Because the concern I have is you do a mill levy and the hospitals and a lot of nonprofits we have are not paying into this whole transit system.
And our understanding is it's just the traditional mill levy is really that's all that's called out in state statute as far as support of the transportation district. Right. So it's just the unfortunate reality of Montana that we keep running into. So, yep.
All right, thank you.
Anything further for Mr. Logan? Thank you, Rusty.
Yeah, thank you. And just to wrap up again, we're not asking for recommendations as far as structure or anything goes with this. Informational process really is what it is. As Councilmember Pittman had stated, just really trying to draw out a roadmap for us for how we get down the road once the road changes into what we believe it's going to change to. So if that's not ambiguous enough, I don't know what it is. But
right.
Thank you
Great.
very much.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to item number 3, the LB Lofts Affordable Housing Development Project Update. Jeez Louise, that's twice now. So I'm going to back up. We're not going to number 3, and I'll call for public comment on the Met. My apologies.
This one? Either one's good? Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Eric Schmidt, 909 Burlington Avenue. I wanted to thank the Met for their great presentation. This is some really informative information. I am a partial time writer of the transit system. I've done a couple of experiments since moving from Ward 1 downtown to Ward 3, so I've got a little bit longer of a commute now. And I have to say that the improvements that the team has made to ridership in terms of the mapping, the tracking, the ability for different payment forms has improved my ability to use that. And I've also seen its ability to improve other riders' experiences as well. So the drivers have been incredibly on time and helpful. They've been incredibly polite. The other riders have also had their ability to get on and off really eased as well, right? The tap to pay system is incredible. I look forward to the new system that they're going to add, as well as that mapping system. So just want to encourage you to keep an open mind. The other riders who do ride with me, this is their primary and only mode of transportation to get to a lot of places throughout Billings, whether they're going downtown to the senior center, the Parks and Rec, they're going to the hospitals. I implore you to find a partnership with them because a lot of your ridership goes to the major clinics, both downtown and on the west end. So the Stewart Park Transfer Station is a huge portal for folks going over to Billings Clinic, as well as hitting up your bigger commerce areas like the mall too. So you do get a lot of transportation that way. And your other service providers downtown, they may be nonprofits, but they're providing a lot of services to folks who rely on the transit station, whether that's a nonprofit, a church, the other folks who are wanting those people to be in their community. They may be able to help find some other synergies, some partnerships to make, expansion and other services, of the Met system work really well. So just want to thank the Met department. Went really well. Appreciated it. It was really great information, and thanks for your consideration.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Jeff Kettleson. I live in the 5th Ward. It was a great presentation right now for our transportation system. And what it highlights is the absolute wonderful growth that our city is currently experiencing. All one has to do is look around town and you'll see construction everywhere. Soon we'll be touching Laurel. One of the things that Rusty, our transportation director, touched upon that nobody up here talked about or wants to talk about is the funding sources. If you will go back and look at the slides, you'll see one of the highlights of the funding sources was impact fees. Impact fees are fees that are charged to the new construction people. It's fees that are charged to the growth people. It's not fees that are charged for citizens. So like Councilmember Kennedy tonight correctly pointed out, us citizens that live in Billings, if you expect us to pay extra to give services out there, that's not a hard sell. That's a no-go. That's not going to happen. And we shouldn't be asked to pay for that. Impact fees, what are those? Well, over in the Heights Water District, which is all of Ward 2 and parts of Ward 1, you're looking at 24% increase of your water fees this year. Impact fees would have covered that. Next year, the rumor is you're going to get another 20%. Impact fees. Missoula charges them. Helena charges them. Great Falls charges them. Bozeman charges them. But here in Billings, oh no, we don't do that. What we do is we keep taking money from the citizens. Your garbage place, we got to pay to open up another cell. That's our second biggest capital improvement project. Impact fees, we wouldn't have to pay for that. And the biggest one is the new water plant. In Helena, you wouldn't pay for it. In Missoula, you wouldn't pay for it. In Bozeman, you wouldn't pay for it. In Great Falls, you wouldn't pay for it. But here in Billings, we don't have representation for we the people. We got representation for the Chamber of Commerce, the companies. You know, sooner or later, maybe the policy will change, and you'll take the citizens' point of view. But unfortunately, I haven't seen that yet. But we'll keep working on it. Thank you very much.
Anyone else?
Is this on? Administration. Paul Clark, Ward 1, the heart of the South Side. I met with Rusty 8-9 months ago, and I've asked Rusty, give me a bus stop in front of the Gratitude in Action Family Services, the place that needs the most people to be picked up. And again, Rusty is very informative. That man spends a lot of time on this project. He had no representation from the City of Billings council members who just now saw this. Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Boyette, Mr. Nicholson, please, I need your help. These are the poorest of poor people that need rides right on First Avenue South. The traffic is there. You talk about something 10 miles away in Laurel. Give me a break. We need some service here in Billings for these people. $4, they can barely scrape up $2. We're talking the poorest of poor. Help them out. We the people.
Further public comment regarding this item? All right, seeing none, I will close that part of the agenda. We're at 7 o'clock. Council, I've had a request for a break. You all good with that? All right, 10 minutes. Thank you. All right, I call us back to order. Our council is here. I would like us to go into item number 3 now, the LB Lofts.
Honorable Mayor and City Council members, I am happy to introduce the project
Gentlemen, ladies and
development
gentlemen.
team for LB Lofts. For the developer, Heather McMillan is the
Come on,
project
folks, let's have a
development.
seat. We're started. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm just trying to get you some airtime here.
Yeah, airtime. Well,
Okay.
that's the important part. Heather McMillan is the project development director. For the owner of the project, Patty Webster, the executive director and CEO, is on the Zoom call. And Amber Uselak, the occupancy director from Homefront, is also here. All right.
Yes, I'll start. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Again, my name is Heather McMillan, and I'm the Project Development Director for Homeward. Really happy to be giving you guys an update tonight. I'll follow the format in which you saw in your board packet, the financial summary where the project is right now. We were able to provide kind of that written update that was part of your board package, but the good news is that on June 8th, we did receive the full funding for our hard debt on the project. The Go Montana Housing Fund was very competitive at the state level, and they did award LB Lofts on both about $7 million between the two sides of the project. The other thing that happened in June was that the Board of Directors for Homefront went ahead and earmarked an additional $6.2 million for the project. They had disposition funds available, and they committed additional resources to the project. Those are things that are helping the finding additional resources, but what really came into play was the work that we did with High Plains Architects. Eric Schmidt is here. He'll be talking in a little bit more detail as part of this presentation. But we went back to the table and we really worked on the design and finding savings with the design. We were also able to hire Langless Construction. They came in and they did preliminary cost estimating for us. And so they gave us our initial estimate, but then they were able to go back to the table and run numbers based on some of the design choices that we were making on the project. I think the team really put their head together. We ended up going from a 5-unit and 6-unit building model to all 6-unit building model, which means that we have one additional home up at LB Lofts, but we have one less building. And so that actually saved us money in the long run. So Eric can show you some of the pictures. We were able to and talk through this in more detail. We were able to meet with the development committee of Homefront's board and go through this in detail last week, and they approved the design change overall. Councilman Pittman was able to be there and listen to some of those changes as well. And so hopefully you'll hear a little more detail about that as we progress through this update. Some additional work is being done with Raymond James and Glacier Bank. We're working through due diligence with the equity team and the lending team. And actually this month on July 20th, the last piece with Montana Housing will be that we're going to be at their board meeting on the 20th, and they will be doing the bond resolution for the 4% tax credits on the 4% side of this project. We could go into detail if you guys want to ask questions about that, but that's just the state confirming that we have the bonding authority to move forward with the project. So between the savings we found on design and the additional resources, we've been able to meet in the middle and come up with a feasible project where we are. We have a little bit more room to go on cost savings, but we're hoping to do that with our general contractor once we can get them on board formally for the construction of this project. The other piece that was, I think, really important for you guys to understand is that we are hoping that we can give you an updated schedule for this project. We will be working with the due diligence, with the lending team, with the equity team, working to get construction bids in, subcontractor bids in, all through July and August. We intend on closing the financial overall package in September, but we do want to start moving dirt in August. If we can hire our general contractor now, which we're hoping that we can do that with the procurement requests we've made of you all that will be voted on next Monday. If we get a general contractor on board, we are scheduled to start moving dirt at the end of August. We've been working with the city of Billings. Eric can talk about the overall timeline for the permitting, but we have had a site plan into them for the last 2 years. We need to do a small revision. We're removing one of those building footprints, but there's not a lot of changes to that design. We'll get an earlier permit for the site work, and we will start moving dirt and working on the site plan while the rest of the building permits are being put together. So time is of the essence. I think you all want to see movement. We want to see movement and get started with that construction. And so again, the overall timeline is to start moving dirt in August, close the financing package in September, not long after, and then move into that full construction period. I'm going to let Amber give a little bit of an update on the property status.
Hi, I'm Amber Uzlak with Homefront. I just want to confirm, it was in your update, but I do want to confirm that all pods have been removed from that site out of city limits into county land for storage. That site has been cleaned up, and we will maintain that fence around the site. Currently, just the site's a little bit uneven, and also just to keep folks off the site, there's been a lot of attention to it. So we plan to maintain the fence that's on there until the dirt work begins in August.
And now what we're most excited to do is talk to you guys about our general contractor procurement process. We were able to, there's a write-up in your packet. We were able to submit to the state and to the city of Billings a request, instead of doing a sealed bid process, we wanted to use a federally approved and state approved process of using an RFP to hire a contractor, a general contractor. The general contractor would be interviewed. They would give us their fees, their percentages on overhead, profit, and general requirements, and they would have to meet certain qualifications. But bringing them on board now means that they can be working with the design team on cost savings, looking at the structure, looking at what's being in this new redesign, really refining, getting bid packets together and get it out on the street. And so there is a kind of a two-part competitive process. The request for proposal is competitive in the sense that they're interviews and we hire the general contractor, but then every subcontractor, whether the general contractor self-performs or brings in a sub, that is all an open competitive bid process. And that's something that if we bring the GC on now, we can start getting those bid packages together and getting those subcontractors in alignment so that we can really start moving, as I said, moving dirt in August and really start on the full-on construction in September. And so that's, we're here to answer detailed questions on that, but I do want Eric to have an opportunity with High Plains to kind of walk you through the design changes and answer any questions on scheduling as well in more detail.
I have a presentation. Is that okay if I plug it in? Yeah, no problem. We there? Hey, great. Hey. I'm just going to scroll through this rather than a fancy PowerPoint presentation. But again, good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Eric Schmidt. I'm the principal architect on this project with High Plains Architects. Excited to show you some updated design imagery for the project. It's perhaps been a little while since you've seen anything from my office on this project, but we have been working diligently in the background. And a lot of that work is trying to help mitigate cost risk for this project, right? I cannot control the numbers that come in on bid day. As much as I like to have a crystal ball, it's always up to the market to say what is out there. And we want to help this project achieve their project goals of providing affordable housing and doing that at a low risk come bid day. So we want to try to make things a little bit more conventional, especially when we're using something that is somewhat more non-conventional. Here we go. So as Heather had mentioned, we have been working with Langless and Associates providing those pre-construction services. The project had been at the earlier stages of design, at risk of exceeding what the project could afford from a financing perspective. So that meant we needed to go back to the drawings, make sure that we could make that the goals happen for this project, which we're utilizing the pods, provide high quality, affordable housing, and create a livable living neighborhood as well. So we want to keep those big goals in mind and see what we could do to make this project still fit all that within that project budget. So as far as the project had looked, we had been at 18 buildings, a mixture of 6plexes and 5plexes, or five unit buildings. Those are highlighted in red on the plan, and the 6plexes are in green. That site plan has stayed primarily intact. We did a significant amount of design work, including collaboration with the planning department to work through the new zoning and land use regulations within the city, crafting that space with Homefront and their board and committee members as representatives of the neighborhood and the population that they serve to create lots of street frontage space for outdoor recreation and use, gathering spaces amongst the buildings. And that scheme has stayed essentially the same across this project as we've worked to revise the design. So we have implemented parking zone throughout the kind of as a horseshoe around the buildings, as well as utilizing street parking to ensure that there is plenty of parking space for the units, as well as creating these outdoor courtyard spaces around the building. So this was the design as was. You can see that the mixture of building types were the 6plexes more along the street frontage and 5plexes more along the backside, trying to accommodate the variety of scales that are in this overall neighborhood. You have 2-story, you've got 1-story, 2.5 stories around the neighborhood, trying to blend that with these 2-story, 3-story combinations, having patios and porches around the buildings as well to continue to have eyes on the street, eyes and engagement within the neighborhoods, so that there weren't any blind corners. Parents can watch their kids, neighbors can be in contact with each other and grow community in that way. You can see that those designs were utilizing a modified flat roof or a low slope roof for the structures that allowed for some more flexibility of the building placement relative to the site and future plans for solar power. These buildings will be all solar, so the opportunity to provide on-site power generation to help reduce operating costs for both Homefront as owner and tenants over the long run was an option. Turns out that when you utilize that building material, it is very stable, it's very good, but the cost effectiveness of that material on smaller buildings wasn't quite adding up. So that was some really good feedback that we received from Langless to maybe change our roofing style, maybe make some accommodations with those future planning goals, knowing that still solar in the future, that's something that we want to pursue, can be a reality with a pitched roof. There might just be some slight performance loss rather than a perfect idealized system. Another comment that Heather made was that there are some questions on foundation amount, like how many foundations, right, is a big number thing. You've got excavation, you've got over excavation, you've got concrete. So we wanted to simplify that system down and to reduce the number of excavations. So that did a little bit of math. We found out that if we added one more unit, we could reduce a whole building footprint. That really did help with some potential cost savings. So we're now 102 units rather than 101, and that's 17 buildings. So the floor plans that we had before were rather trickier to lay out because we were committed to using 100% of the pods essentially. So we had planned on 2 pods per unit per floor, which we are still planning 2 pods per unit on the 2nd and 3rd floor. And a pod in this case is a pre-designed, certified, manufactured mobile dwelling unit. So they were previously certified to the building code at the time that they were constructed. They were moved to a site, they were placed into service, and they still do meet building code In some respects, there will be some modifications to these modular housing units as they are placed into service within the new building. But we did discover that there was some unnecessary complexity with utilizing those modular units on the first floor. There was some cost effectiveness and some performance improvements for accessibility and going more traditionally framed on the first floor, which was a larger priority. So we wanted to make that happen. That did remove then the pods, as we call them, from the first floor while increasing usable area. So you can see these are the floor plans. We were accommodating kitchens, living rooms, laundry spaces, pantries, and then the bed bath pods come as is with a couple of modifications. So where are we at with the updated site plan? You can see here, this is from Sandbell, who is our land team for this project. A little bit closer look at the overall site layout. We are removing that one building in the upper left corner. That would be the northwest corner, which is the closest to the adjacent neighborhood or the community just north of our property. Felt like it might be a little bit looming at the 3 stories up in that corner, and doing the new math that we had that helped pull that away and create more of an open space and a juncture for some of the pathways to the neighboring parkland that's adjacent to the property, as well as create a space for a dog park as part of this neighborhood, which had been a long-term goal for the neighborhood as well. So that removed one of the buildings. It allowed for making that change in land use, then didn't have any reductions in parking as well. And then with this layout and the new building design, all of those ground floor units will have the option for accessibility, which was an increase too. So we'll have upwards of 34 potentially accessible units, which is fantastic. So that is a great asset to the community. We did end up removing the patios and balconies due to some cost concerns with those added features. But since we were making an expression and a larger investment into the outdoor spaces, which included community picnic areas and park benches and some of game areas as well, we figured that was a pretty fair trade-off to have some more dedicated area during those great 9 months of the year that Montanans love to live outside. And then when the other 3 months when it's snowy, they get to ski or go everywhere they want. Snowshoe. Yes, it did allow more storage within the units too. Heather is reminding me. It's very important. All right. So I want to provide a couple of revised conceptual images so you can see the neighborhood's perhaps a little bit more verdant than it will be in its first years. But we want to give you a sense of the scale. Those white buildings in the foreground are the adjacent Pheasant Home neighborhood that Homefront built several years ago, and so you can see the size and scale of our buildings. We will be playing around with some color to help bring some life to the neighborhood and make it very compatible with the adjacent buildings and the neighborhood, the other developments that Homefront has had. And see how we're also utilizing a mixture of gable types to help break down the scale of the building, provide a little bit of elevation, but also softening of the height too. So we are 3 stories, which means our eaves are around 34 feet and our ridges are around 40 feet, more or less, which still complies within our zoning regulations. We are creating these nice courtyard spaces, plenty of trees, parking area, snow storage area, and you can also see our designated dog park located over in the corner too. A couple of highlights: we are pursuing a significant amount of low and no irrigation landscaping, which includes both xeric and native plants across the neighborhood, and then those built out community spaces as well. So there's a good amount of outdoor space and life that'll be around these buildings, as well as uniqueness to each space. So every tenant has a space that they really feel can be theirs. They can claim identity to it, which is very important for staying power, longevity, and identity and personal growth. We also wanted to highlight entrances to these units, so having a small awning to protect them and identify the main entrances while still keeping eyes on the street with those upper windows. We did remove the balconies and patios, but we still were actually able to get more space within those units and maintain eyes on the street. to get this nice activity around the outside. And for those first floor units, they will have buffer gardens around them too. So no one will be right up against your window or walking right against your window, which can be quite uncomfortable. We want to make sure that you had plenty of space to have that sense of privacy. So redesigned first floor plan, you can see here, new walls are in orange, furniture in gray, no pods on this floor. So both units on the first floor are designed for accessibility and adaptability, meaning that we can have all the clearances available for maneuverability, lights, strobes, horns, etc. for communication. And then if someone does need additional accessibility aids, they can be added to those other units that don't have them pre-installed. The foundation is far more simplified by removing those balconies and patio bump outs. That's helpful to save on some costs as well. Fewer corners means less form work. And then we're still utilizing a central stair core and mechanical room for those services to help share the load from a house load perspective. And we wanted to make sure that central stair wasn't taking up too much unrentable area to increase efficiency for these units, get them a little bit more space, but still allow for moving a couch up. Then on the second and third floors, the floor plans are similar, so that will help yield some efficiency for construction. We are utilizing the pods more as bookends, or as you may have heard on the news, as I called them, the Oreo cookies, and we're building the creamy center in between. So we are utilizing the pods as pre-constructed units, building more or less a structural frame, fly those pods in, set them down, and then infill the new framing in between, utilizing the pods for the majority of what we can use them for structure, wall sheathing, fixtures, and the openings as well. We are building 2 new bearing walls on the outside to help simplify some of the structural load, which is really helpful, but it allows us to have more space inside of these units. So the upstairs units went from about 750 or 770 square feet to 850. So that allowed us to get more of a dedicated dining space, larger kitchens and living rooms, and more storage, including pantry, coat closet, linen closets, into all these units. So we think it was a really smart move in terms of the layout for simplicity of structure, for help reduce that cost risk, as well as to provide slightly more livable units as well. So highlights to key takeaways: 1 fewer building, but 1 more dwelling unit. The floor plan was simplified into more normal rectangles, no bumps in or outs. Patios and balconies removed. The roof was changed to a gable roof. That allows us to use a slightly more conventional structure, as well as asphalt shingles. Gives us a little bit more bidding competitiveness as well. There's more providers out there on the market. So that was another aspect that we took, is how can we make this a little bit more competitive to the market when we do take it to subs, get it out on the street. All windows are now going to be the same too, which simplifies the design, gives us a little bit more competition as well. And then the units are larger, designed for more usable storage. Make the design compatible with the neighborhood, and our savings goal with this design, as kind of verified with what Langless had done for us, was upwards of $3 million. We're hoping for more on that come bid day. I think that is my last page. Yes, so I can speak a little bit to schedule as well. My design team is currently rapidly working away on the updated design of the project. Includes our construction documents for that. So we do have a master site plan that was previously submitted to the city of Billings earlier. I think it was earlier this year. We did receive some comments, revision requests, clarifications, which is a normal part of the process, back from the city, and we have been holding off on some of that as well, kind of figuring out how we want to respond to that with the updated design. And then we are submitting our revised package here by the end of the month. So we're excited to get that shared back with the department. And then I do have a pre-application meeting scheduled with the building department to go over the design updates as well. We have had several different meetings with the various different parties in the project, from building department, planning, fire, zoning as well, a couple of different times across the last 2 years. So I want to just make sure everyone's brought up on board with the changes, and then see if they have any questions, what are concerning details that they might have, what do they want to see. Some of those questions I may not be able to answer, right? They may be sequencing or constructability questions that really a general contractor is going to be able to help with, to ensure that we're able to utilize these pods to their best advantage. And that best advantage is essentially speed and the constructability, the ability to start building and framing elements off-site, and to then be able to place those buildings, those pre-manufactured units onto the building and help keep that building going relatively rapidly. So we're working on our permit documents right now. We aim to have those submitted in end of July, early August to the city. That's important that we keep moving on that, and we'll be working with the general contractor on bid packages for public as soon as we can. That's our goal. Anything else you want me to hit on schedule? Yeah. Yeah, so the master site plan and site permit is what we're prioritizing right now, so that when we do have the opportunity to select and move forward with the general contractor, they can get ready to get themselves ready, get themselves mobilized, and start doing some prep work on site. That can include grading and grubbing, fencing, mobilization, staking, other surveying. They can get us all ready to go. So once those site trades, those site subs are procured, they'll have a nice layout and lay down ground ready to go for our underground excavation and on working across. We do have some other funding goals. We've got to get some buildings up and going and occupied as soon as we can.
All right, great. And we just wanted to give you guys an update on kind of all the things that we could and what we've been working on, and we're happy to answer questions at this point.
Thank you. We're going to start on this side with Ms. Aguirre, and then we're going to go over here. Who wants to go next? Mr. Boyette will be next.
Thank you for all the hard work that has been put into this, in the updates and upgrades and the intentional shaving of the budget. It still looks like it's going to be a really great product. My only question is what is the plowing and shoveling gonna look like?
Well, that's a great question, and that's another reason the dog park with the really large dog graphics. That's another additional. We had been accommodating the site, the snow removal on site, and that was another option of a place to put snow. So a lot of our play areas and open spaces are designed for the snow, so we'll be able to keep that on site.
Mr. Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two questions. One is none of these things will work unless you have people on site, like managers. Mm-hmm. Hopefully you're going to have more than one manager for this complex. Have you thought about that at all? And then the second question is, you didn't even touch on the biggest thing for me. How much is this total project estimated to cost?
Good questions. Part of the RFP process, we will be asking for the site staff dedicated by the general contractor to the project, and that's something we're very interested in because it is a large project and we'll need superintendents and kind of all the different layers. So that will, if we are allowed to do the request for proposals, that's a big part of what they'll respond to and how we'll select the contractors. So site supervision is very, very important.
My question was, how many, once it's built, you're going to have managers
Oh,
there.
once it's built? Yeah. I'm going to let Amber speak to the fact that you have a campus there. So.
Sure. So that whole street, that subdivision is owned and managed by Homefront currently. We have 80 units standing, and we have an office and community center out there. So we would intend that somebody would be managing on site at that community subdivision.
And then just a ballpark figure for how much this thing's going to cost.
Sure. We went back and we were asked that at the development committee, and so we're at about $261,000 per unit on 102 units, and it's also $344,000 all in. That's land, architects, financing, everything times 102. So my apologies, I didn't have those figures in front of me, but that's the math that you'd want to do.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Neese, then Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I'd like to thank Patty for making sure that those units were removed as code enforcement asked. And I appreciate you taking care of the cleanup of the neighborhood. I drove by there and saw that, and that looked a whole lot better. And so I do appreciate you working with the city and getting that area cleaned up. You mentioned that you were doing RFP, but then you also mentioned some qualifications. So is this an RFP or an RFQ?
Well, technically, for HUD terms, it's an RFP because there is a proposal, but it's not a bid. So they're going to have to put, mathematically, they have to put in their overhead profit and general requirements percentages because there's limitations within the tax credit program. So that's the proposal part of it, the math part of it. The rest of it's based on the qualifications, the who's going to manage the construction, their estimated timeline. So it's an RFQ, but there's the P part of it. Proposal is that math on the percentages.
Okay, and so, and then you said the RFP is already out now?
Yes, it's actually out on the street. We're going to issue an addendum and do an extension because there's a couple of contractors that want a little more time, but we've already received 5 or 6 different responses, which is exciting for us. And during our, Langless has responded. We were hoping they would. And then we also had another contractor take a look at the numbers for us when we were doing the cost exercises. And they are also proposing on the project. So there are at least 2 contractors that are very familiar with the overall design and can be up to speed right away. But again, we'll assess everybody, go through the qualifications and do the interviews over the next couple weeks. But we're waiting to do everything formally until we are next week's council meeting when the procurement method is approved.
Okay, and when's
Hopefully.
the RFP end then? What's the deadline? You extended it, but what's the deadline now?
We extended it for another week. I think it's going to be next Friday that it'll be due, but the holiday is screwing up dates in my head right now because we're trying to do it trying to get them in earlier this week, but I think it's going to go out or be finalized end of next week.
Okay. And so the units you said were 261 a square foot. I'd heard they were 288. Is that not correct?
$261,000 per unit.
Okay, 261,000 per. What's the square footage cost?
I don't have my pro forma in front of me to tell you that exactly. I'd be happy to dig that out and get back to you guys and speak to it next week if you would want. I can do it in advance or I can look it up while we're still here.
Okay, I'll let someone else ask questions and I'll come back later.
All right, Mr. O'Donnell.
Thank you. I want to go back to last October when the council approved, like $1.5 million or authorized money for the project. And one thing that really bothered me at the time, looking under recommendation here, it says the recommendation for approval to allocate funding is contingent upon the viability of stored building materials and from firm funding commitments, whatever. When were these pods, when were they built?
Yeah, 2012 would have been the original construction.
And how much do you have invested? Do you own the pods?
Yes, Homefront owns the pods.
How much did each one cost?
I think, 12,000, I think, roughly. Those numbers were a long time ago. Sorry, I apologize, I don't know that off the top of my head.
The term contingent upon the viability of stored building materials, has anybody reviewed them recently?
Yes.
Has the building inspector passed upon them that they are sufficient for meeting the criteria?
They were built originally to follow code at the time. The High Plains met with city staff and went through the details early on about that. But what happened most recently is that Langless went through every single pod, opened it, evaluated, checked all the things that people have been worried about, moisture, anything like that, and they were able to quantify so many pods that were in good condition. There were several pods that were, in a little bit lesser condition, and so we're prioritizing which pods go into the project. And the original supplier of the pods has offered to take back any that aren't up to the level that we want them to be and exchange them. And so, yes, we've been through them very thoroughly, and we'll continue to work on those. Especially as Eric works with the city on the structure that's going to support them. I'm sure the city will want to get in and see them again, but they've been very carefully assessed.
So one last thing, the viability of stored building materials is that what you're saying is that does not change the total cost of the project at all, that's well within the range that you expected in the first place?
Yes, that the pods were, and It's simpler actually now without the pods on the first floor. Their better bang for the buck value is on second and third floor, with the first floor being framed and not pods trying to be part of that structure. One, we get fully accessible units. We can make them all adaptable with blocking in the walls. There's the right turn radiuses, but it also simplifies the structure exponentially. And that was part of the cost exercise with Langless and High Plains, to where we could get we found more resources and we shaved cost to get the project to financial feasibility.
Mr. Mayor, one more line of questioning, if I could. Project utilization and beneficiaries. It says the target populations for this project are Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander. Are there any in Billings? Anyway, and then it says Black African Americans and Asian households. It seems to me that this strikes me on the face of it to be ghettoization of a project, that all of the people who fit that category are going to be directed into one development, which is going to change the character of that development.
I say this with respect. I'll try not to take offense at that language, but I understand your concern. But we are not targeting and trying to funnel people. We are following fair housing standards and offering these homes to all people, and that's why it's spelled out so clearly, and it's following all of HUD and fair housing rules. And I don't know, Amber, if you'd want to speak to any additional pieces to that. Did I answer it all right?
I think you did a great job. Let's move on to Mr. Pittman now.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. A couple of questions. When I was at your meeting, I thought the all-in cost per unit right now was $388,000.
That's okay. That's better. I was going off the top of my head. Yes. So I was looking at a spreadsheet when I answered the question at the committee. So
right.
280 or the 380 all in. That's land, architects, value, all of it, and then the 261,000 is what is the hard cost per unit.
Okay. So and then my second one is I'm just concerned about the timeline because what I'm hearing from planning is that you've done such substantial changes to the project that we're not going to make these timelines with the amount of evaluation of what you're doing, how you're attaching things, all of that. That's a concern of mine as to, and then if we start building in August or September, then we're right into winter. But that's one of my concerns. And then this one probably more because of what your ask is, may take legal, may take a little input from all of you, but this request for a change in procurement process modification, at your board meeting, you were saying that Billings is unique to this. Is that, or what are you asking and why, I guess?
So we have to, with the funding sources, especially the resources the city allocated, have to follow home rules. So there's federal rules associated with it, HUD procurement. What we're asking falls within that. HUD requires you to use a sealed bid and or one of these other two methods. And so it is a qualified federal. We've asked the state for the use of this RFP process, and we've asked the city of Billings and the city of Great Falls to use this RFP process. In the last 5 years, we've used it 7 different times in those jurisdictions, and they've approved it because it follows state law and their city procurement. And that's why we went back to the city of Billings and asked them to look and make sure it met their procurement standards. So I think that's, right now, I think that's what they're recommending as staff, but I'll let them speak to it because I know they spent a lot of time looking to make sure it worked.
So Councilmember Pittman, I think our common terminology for that would be construction manager at risk process, the alternate process that they're asking for, and we've done that in several projects here in Billings.
Okay. Follow up. Is that something that we need to look at modifying? Is it hindering building? And I guess that might be something for Councilman Aspenleiter to maybe help us with. Are you encountering this as an impediment?
No, like City Administrator Iflin has said, the city's used CMAR, construction manager at risk, a handful of times. It's not widely used. It's a targeted procurement procedure that the state uses, the highway department uses it, and other public entities like the Lockwood High School was built under a construction manager at risk. The benefit of that contracting procedure is that you negotiate in the profit margin, and it helps you set your cap on, you know, a not to exceed budget. Generally speaking, you're able to work with the contractor to negotiate, as opposed to a closed bid process where you don't have the flexibility to work with the design team and the contractor to try to get to a price that's agreeable. You put something out and then they put a price on it in a standard bid process. This allows you to work collectively and collaboratively to make sure that you hit your price and you have a guaranteed max price with a built-in profit margin that's transparent to both sides. So it's a standard process.
I think Mr. Neese has a follow-up.
Thank you. You mentioned the cost savings or hope with the contractor. My experience is projects usually have cost overruns and all kinds of stuff. And so I hope you're better off at getting it done than generally done. I'm going to go back to these pods for a minute. The initial plan was all 3 stacked. Now it's going to be 1 stick built on the bottom and then 2 stacked on top of just the stick built, or is there going to be a steel structure in there? How's that going to be accomplished for the structural integrity of the building?
Absolutely. The primary structure will be still stick framed, like you mentioned, on the first floor. Interlaced into that will be a post and beam, likely a steel column and a wood beam to pick up the load of the pods. Then we're going to be utilizing part of the pods themselves for attaching the remainder of the floor structure, and then additional wood framing, traditional framing for the stair shafts and other bearing walls. So there is some, the pods are relatively easy to design for gravity load, right? Gravity, we know where it goes down. That's great. Shear load is the more complex one in any building. How do you stop it from twisting, racking, turning, tipping? And that's kind of the harder one to manage. And that's where actually stacking these pods right next to each other to be able to utilize both walls for a stronger shear and connecting them to that frame and the structure below. So we are trying to eliminate as much steel out of the project as possible, because we have been seeing that as a cost increase right now. It's keeping it more in the wood realm, also for that bidding competition as well. Yes. Yeah, we really tried to simplify a lot of that structure for the layout itself. And
so does the early design have steel as well?
The earlier design did have steel. In fact,
so you're using less steel now?
Yes.
Okay, and so my concern is Councilmember Pittman mentioned timing on this. We spoke to building this morning, and they said they hadn't heard you haven't met with them in 2 years. And so maybe there's a miscommunication. I don't know, but my concern is this project may get, when you submit your new plans, which is a pretty good redesign. It's not just a minor redesign. This could delay the plan longer than what we have really, I think, has been set out to be, say, mid-September, to make sure these funds are done and being used, so we can start looking somewhere else. And so I'm not so sure. What I don't want to see is this project start. You start doing site work, and then this we have to pull the funding because it's not being worked on. The plans aren't approved by mid-September. And so I guess I'm a little concerned about doing anything with this until engineering. I guess, do you have an engineer on site that have been looking at this, or are you doing the work? Is Langlis doing the work, engineering work too, or how's that? Again, I'm not in the building, so I don't understand and don't know that.
Yeah, no problem. So I did speak with Travis at the building department today to get on his schedule and availability, and he did have staff interested and wanting to meet with us to review updates to the design.
Yeah, I believe that was after you got a notice from Brenda about that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes. It had been on my to-do list and just needed to get it done. So happy to have that. Do want to contextualize the houses, the buildings too, right? Each floor plate is about 2,000 square feet. So it's really a 6,000 square foot construction when you think about it, which is a larger house. So it's really not totally outside the realm of what the building department has been looking at. I've definitely given them far more complex buildings with some of our historic projects. So I look forward to walking them through how we're planning on utilizing them. The pods, they do need work. I'm not going to lie to you and say they don't. There is some modification that we're going to have to do to them. They are somewhat unique, but they are still all wood frames. We have to take out some windows. We have to clean up some floors. So there's a little bit of modification for attaching the plumbing, ensuring that everything is pressurized, right? That all happens in normal construction too. A lot of it just happens to be built inside of these pods. And then the wood framing construction and its attachment is also relatively straightforward. We're not proposing anything that's unconventional in terms of unique materials.
But aren't the pods more an experimental type of a material?
The pod itself is made out of everything that you can find out of a typical building supply
But I think
store.
the use of them, because I think if you said earlier on that these were certified housing, certified as housing units.
Mhm.
But then once you modify that housing unit, do you not lose the certification that because it was built to a certain spec and certification? And so now once you modify that, then the whole thing has to be recertified, does it not?
That is an excellent question. I don't have the exact answer.
Yeah, see, these are the kind of questions I think, I won't ask any more of those. But these are the kind of questions I think you're going to see when it comes to your building code, trying to get your permits, of having engineering to make sure that all of this is done early on. And it's been 2 years since the building department has heard from anyone on this project. And you realize, don't blame the building department if it doesn't get approved on time. And then the funding gets pulled because of you've taken too long. So I just want you to be aware that there's a lot of changes, as I understand. This is not a simple change. And so I'm a little concerned about the timeline on this. And I've supported HUD in all the projects they've done in that area. But this one, I think from the beginning, and Councilmember Pittman has said, when's the time to pull the plug? I think September, mid-September may be the time if this is not, being built and stuff like that.
Well, we don't take turning dirt lightly, and I didn't mean to sound that way. Eric's had on his to-do list to meet with the city, but he couldn't really meet until Homefront's board approved the design changes, which was last week, right before the holiday. So he set up the time to meet with Travis. He can meet with engineering. I'm an architect as well. I know the design is far simpler than what was originally proposed, and we're not going to count on the original certification of the building being built to code because, well, it was 2012 as well, and that's not current code. We're going to meet all of current design standards and really just be reusing the structure and some essential building pieces, but it becomes a new structure within this. So it's vital for Eric to meet with the building department to walk through those changes. What he showed them 2 years ago, or whenever the last time he met, was far more complicated in what ifs to where we have now, and the structural team has been very detailed. We won't turn dirt in August unless we feel comfortable with what the building department feels about this project. And that's what the due diligence we're doing all of July. And when I say end of August, we would turn dirt, that's because it's just a matter of waiting until they can draw fast enough to get it into the city and give the city plenty of time to go through the permitting, getting that site plan approved and starting that site work in advance of the full building permits is a risk, but it'll be a calculated risk. And we certainly don't want to set Homefront up for failure on this. We just want to make sure we're moving dirt and getting stuff ready because winter's coming. I know it sounds funny now because it's July, but it's not long from now.
Days are getting shorter.
Yeah. And that's why having the general contractor on board as well helps us with all of the logistics and all of the feasibility pieces so that we feel comfortable and the building department feels comfortable.
Well, I guess the only thing I'll say is, I have no issue with the changing the RFP process to an RFP process, but I do have concern of this moving forward without building giving their blessing on it. And so I'm going to ask to have the development agreement amended to make sure that no groundwork, nothing is started until building, and that is sure that these materials are going to be properly used. Because what I don't want to see is something started out there and then we have a disaster out there and then we're all over again hearing from the neighbors how this place looks because it's been all torn up.
Totally
we've
agree.
been through it once. We don't need to go through it again.
Totally agree. I would request that the building department give their opinion, not necessarily have to issue full permits. Because if they issue full permits, that's months away, and that puts us well behind what we need to be for this fall. So I think Eric can have that conversation, and I would hope that the simplification could go a long way, and the building department hopefully can, I don't know what they could do to give you guys comfort that it's going to move through the process, but be happy to entertain whatever necessary to make sure that you guys are comfortable. And I would actually want that anyway, because I don't want to recommend to Homefront that we start moving dirt without confidence that this can be permitted.
Anything else for our presenters? Thank you, folks. Nice job.
Yep.
Thanks. I've just been informed that we're due for another public comment period. Thank you, Mr. Neese. So is there a public comment regarding the LB lofts?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Jeff Kettleson. I live in the 5th Ward. Tonight before us is a request to change the purchasing agreement between Home World and a contractor. I would like not to speak towards Homefront, because I think Homefront is a good organization, and I think it's run by good people. The problem is that I have is with Homeworld. Homeworld was in our paper recently. It was about the Sage Towers, the people that had to live with bed bugs, cockroaches, and other vermin. A truly despicable organization in my eyes. They didn't do anything until it came time for them to come and ask us for money. And then things happened. You gave them the money. That's great. But see, I don't trust Homeworld. This is a corporation that isn't even in our town. They don't have. They're out of a different town. They don't represent us. They abuse us. And what they're asking for tonight is for you to give them a little bit more rope to make it easy for them. They've lied to the city council. They've dragged this project out forever. The place was an absolute desire. It's not Homefront. It's Homeworld. And Homeworld is the ones that are coming before you to ask them to make it a little easier for them. Yes, I understand, Councilmember Scott, that you've used this type of purchasing before in the past. And it might be, in the past, it might have been appropriate. But in this case, it's not. I don't trust these people. They're abusing our town. And I don't really think, like the ward member from 2 said, that this thing's going to even get off the ground. So I 100% would recommend that you do not approve the request for the change of proposal. Thank you.
Other public comment?
I'll speak to public comment in general. That hurts my heart, the previous comment. I'm going to let council know. I was going to let you know next week at council meeting, but we were unaware of any issues with the properties that we preserved at Sage Tower and Fraser Tower. I work for Homeward as the actual organization, and we are a Montana-based company and nonprofit, and we work across the state. We have since relieved our property management company. We weren't allowed to say that at the last meeting, and we've hired a new property manager, and we've spent quite a bit of money on remediation as soon as it was identified at Sage and Fraser. So I know it's not typical to speak to public comment on that, but I was saving it for next week, but I can answer any detailed questions on Sage or Fraser. And I can certainly assure you all that there's been nothing easy about this project or that project in the world that we're working in right now, but we are doing our darndest to get homes created and preserved for people of Billings. And I'm a Montana kid. I grew up in Belgrade, and I did my school shopping here in Billings and have cousins that live in Laurel. So we're not that far off, even though I do live in Missoula now. So thank you.
Thank you. Other public comment? All right, seeing none, oh, come on forward.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to comment on the.
Tell us your name and where you live.
Sorry, my name's Aubrey Kincaid. I live just over on 6th and Yellowstone, just a few blocks away. So, been here in Montana my whole life. I was born in Havre, lived in Billings since '09, and I've seen a lot in this city, and I think it's really a beautiful, wonderful city. It has its issues, as any other city does, but I really think that affordable housing projects like this are one of the biggest things that we need to really strengthen our community, because there's a lot of suffering here. Montana was for many years in a row like one of the suicide capitals of the US, and Billings specifically has seen the brunt of that. And I think a lot of that is due to issues that can't really be solved in a courtroom or anywhere like that. But one of the biggest things we can do to help improve quality of life here is providing good housing that people can actually afford. And from what I've heard, it seems like this project really helps to serve that purpose. And so I would love to see it move forward to really just be built. And yeah, I think that's all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Seeing none, I'll close public comment, and we will move to item number 4, Animal Sheltering Services Update.
Excellent. Excuse me, Mayor, council members. Thank you for.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm here tonight with Tom to share some information on animal shelter as we have proceeded to this point, and so that everybody's on the same sheet of music. Sean Mayo, the assistant chief of the PD, in case I skipped that or if I haven't seen you for a while. First thing we have, just as far as intros. Sorry, is that better? Excellent. So after we had our intros, we're going to jump right into slide 3, so our executive summary for the night. The former contract we had with Yellowstone Valley Animal Shelter did expire on June 30th of this year. We had a proposal from YVAS, but was not tenable for the fiscal requirements that we were reliable or required to stay within. And so the city became involved in the animal shelter services starting on July 1st. We did try to alleviate the expiration of the contract by getting with YVS and director and their attorney before the contract expired and have a sit down with them so we could try to clarify some things and see what we could work with to make services match what we were able to work with on our ceiling for our budget. Those things were discussed within the meeting and taken back to the shelter staff or shelter board, I guess. It was a day or so after that we got word from them that they were under the assumption that we had significantly more funding than what we did, and they were not interested in our number and wanted to treat their proposed number as a floor to negotiate up from, not a ceiling to negotiate down from. So we asked them if they had any other options, and in their email they proposed that they would do a month-to-month rolling contract with us as long as we were able to fund that at the $45,833 a month fee. Or the option 2 was that they would enter into a 6-month contract for services, with the first 3 months being at $30,000, which is the existing price, and then the final 3 months being at the $45,000 price that they wanted to bump up to. There was an early termination fee of $47,000 that was involved in that. If we look at our budgets for FY26, $365,000 is what that would have been for the whole FY26, and the finance department had in our projected 27 budget factored in a 5.2% increase just because we expected it to go up, even though nothing else in the police department seemed to go up on that budget. But that would have bumped them up to $384,000. The problem is that in YVAS's proposal, they wanted $550,000 for the new contract. So significant difference between the two. So going forward, at this point, what we're expecting to do is to, based upon the consideration, the challenges tonight, or the conversations tonight, put together, or not put together, but publish another RFP tomorrow, as long as the group doesn't have any objections to that or assumes that that's the way they want to continue on. The goal would be to publish the RFP, take the requests or the submissions, bring them back in, evaluate them, and then hopefully get a long-term contract put in by November of this year. And then we do have a couple things that are considerations in that. One would be staffing, because we're having to use our animal control officers to staff it at this point. We are asking for some volunteers from different volunteer units that we have within the police department to hopefully give a little relief to that. We do have to worry about longer term temporary commitment in there. So we asked HR to put together 4 temp positions and publish those for temporary work that would extend through the life of the time that it takes to get the long-term contract put in place. So it is requested, it is published, and it's out there, and we're looking for those positions as we go forward. Supplies are being purchased as needed by the animal shelter to deal with whatever the numbers are that we have come in. Medical care is going to have to be put out to the veterinarians as needed, depending upon what comes in and how much. So that'll be an extra incurred expense. But we're hoping that the seasonal and the temporary staffing will work to alleviate a significant amount of the numbers that we expect to come in. Right now, they're still pretty low. Eventual full next steps would be to make sure that we have that submitted, we secure the contract, and then continue to plan for long-term operations should we not receive a viable proposal back in the RFP. So those are the very big, broad 30,000-foot viewpoint of what we're looking at right now. Tom has implemented basically emergency operations at the shelter as far as taking shelter animals in and what is and what isn't and how things are being dealt with there. We have been asking the public since last week to prepare for some possible hiccups, as well as animals that we may not have the room to take in, or not room, but the capabilities to take in, as well as options to help the citizens resolve those things as far as publishing lost found animals on Facebook, turning them over to any entity in town that is operating as a shelter that would be willing to take them. Or if ACO is available, to call ACOs, see if we can find out where the animal belongs to based on the resources we have available. That is slightly hindered because those resources were cut off to us when the contract ended. We're working on reestablishing those. So, do you have any questions for myself or for Tom at this time?
I'm sure we do. And as a matter of fact, Mr. Kennedy was first in line. So, Councilmember Kennedy.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, I've been waiting for this all evening. Zoomed in from my vacation just to talk about this. I guess there's some pieces on this, and I don't know who can answer this. Maybe Kevin can. Looking at the response from the attorney for YVAS, that came back in February. We did not have any. I don't remember we even talked about this contract in budget meetings. So I'm a little taken back by some of this, but I would just ask on just to run over a few things. Kevin, why did it take us so long to really get to the point where we are today?
So, Councilmember Kennedy, we got a couple timelines here. We did put the publish the animal shelter RFP back in February of 26, and we got the proposal from YVAS and reviewed it on March of 26. And then we did kind of go back and forth with Yellowstone Valley Animal Shelter to try to negotiate terms and things of that point. And then I think the communication you're talking about, we didn't receive till May, if I'm not mistaken, from Emily Jones, if that's what we're talking about. And then just with availability and schedules, we didn't meet until I think 2 weeks ago to have that final conversation on month-to-month services.
Okay, thank you for the timeline on that. Just a couple of things I'd like to make a comment on. Their current contract was $30,038. Annually, we were paying $360,456, which is a total for the year at about $1.8 million. The proposal that came from YVAS was starting off with about $45,000 a month, averaged out to be about $37,000 a month. And looking at it, this whole month to month and all of that really kind of muddies the water. I would say if the total contract per year was $550,000 per year from the Yellowstone Valley Animal Shelter, that was way out of our league. I would say after attending most of the budget meetings and everything, it's very high. We didn't have that money. I see that the proposal should be out on 7/7 of 26. I would just ask a couple of things, and I've talked to other council people. I think we look at a 5-year contract. I think on a 5-year contract, who's ever the winner on the RFP and who can meet all of the everything, I think we look at the possibility of looking at 10% on the first year from where we are per month, and then up to 5% on year 2, 3, 4, and 5. So it becomes a package deal of a 5-year contract that may or may not meet some folks that want to go forward. I think it would be a solid packet. But the one thing that I'm very, very disappointed in is, and I'm sorry, I'm going from my computer to my phone because I have a little bit of, we had so much stuff back and forth on it, but I wanted to make sure that we have documentation on all of the animals that are billed to the city, that they're documented, that we have a monthly documentation that comes back to the city to justify all the animals that come through the shelter that's being billed towards the city of Billings. I know there are out of county, there are out of city, there are other folks that that use the Yellowstone Valley Animal Shelter, and I don't think it is correct that the people in the city of Billings contract subsidizes everyone. Looking at the total on this, of what I'm proposing at 10% and then up to 5%, where I think it meets our realm and where we're at in the value for the 5 years. And I think it would also, I think, I don't know where a lot of the numbers came from Yellowstone Valley Animal Shelter's numbers. It looks like it was really padding it, and 50 to 60% was quite a bit more than what I would anticipate. So I would ask to send this back to the staff to come up with a proposal. And then I would also ask Kevin, especially on the animal shelter contract, that we would invite a couple members of the city council to sit through the RFP process so we can look at that and be able to move it forward with whoever has the RFP, who wins that contract, and move it on. I think the biggest thing that I hear is people are very concerned about animals, especially strays, and how they're going to be taken care of. I think it's the money proposed to us was very, very huge increase that the city could not afford. But I think we also need to take into effect that the animals need to be taken care of also. So I'll stop there, and Mayor, let other people make their comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Goes next to Mr. Aspenleiter, then Mr. Lindley.
Thanks, and Assistant Chief Mayor, this is partly for my education too, because I wasn't around back when we used to run this facility before the relationship. Were you?
I had a year and a half on.
Okay. Mr. Stitchfield, were you around at that time? And I guess I'm just curious, and maybe this can be just some follow-up. When we ran that facility, what was the original mission? Were we sheltering animals like a full-blown animal shelter, or are we running similar to what we're going to run now? I mean, taking in public safety animals and animals danger to the community and so on and so forth, or were we as the city running a full-blown shelter?
So I'll try to take a stab at it because I was here back then, but the shelter facility was woefully inadequate from what I recall. It wasn't the current shelter that we're in, so the services that were provided weren't nearly the services that we're providing today through the contract.
Okay, so that helps a little bit, just in the clarification of what was our core mission and our core goal when we were running this facility that now we're kind of reverting back to. I think there's a misconception around what the city's role is with animal control, and it's not being a full-blown shelter like Yellowstone Valley Animal Shelter provides. Like that's not our mission. That's never, from my understanding, never has been our mission within animal control under BPD. Is that a fair assessment?
I think, council member, that there has been some discussion on what we're required to do as a municipality as far as animal control goes and animal sheltering goes. And I don't believe we're required by state statute to run an animal shelter or to fund that. That was my understanding. the animal control portion of it, take care of dangerous animals, dangerous to the public, stuff like that. That is something that we're well within our ability to do. But as far as actually running a shelter or financing a shelter, it is not my understanding that that is a requirement in state law.
Okay. Couple more down this line. One of the comments that got fed out to the masses was a 70% kill rate when the city ran it years ago, and a 96% no kill rate under the current shelter operations under YVAS's leadership. One of the things I'd like to understand, and I'd like to see, I don't know if we have records of this, is my understanding is we still take those animals that are going to be euthanized and we transfer them to the title of the city on paper for YVAS, and then we euthanize the animal under animal control. Is that an accurate assessment of how that works?
That is correct. That's how it works. They transfer them to us, and then we actually perform the euthanasia.
So on paper, this 96% live release rate, they are releasing them live, I suppose, to the city of Billings.
True.
Under the full understanding that we are going to euthanize the animal. So on paper, this is a clean transaction for them. But in reality, we're just the undertaker, unfortunately, in that
We take care
situation.
of the euthanasia. I don't know what their intent is. If they're trying to hide euthanasias, that could be the fact, but I don't know that for.
Okay. And we do that on behalf of county animals as well. We take whatever comes in from the county, and the county doesn't take their animals back to euthanize them.
No,
we
they
do
take
it
the
on their
animals
behalf.
they take their animals into YVAS. The county's got a contract with them, and they drop them off at YVAS. As far as the euthanasia piece on the county side, I have no idea, because I know their people aren't certified to euthanize, so I don't know what they do. Or if YVAS just transfers those to us and we end up euthanizing them.
When I talked to Sheriff O'Donnell, he indicated that they transfer them to you. And you, as the city of Billings Animal Control, then euthanize whatever comes in from the county as well. They do not take their animals
Yeah, I'm
back.
sure that's done through YVAS, though, not through the county.
Yeah, it goes through YVAS, and then YVAS transfers it to you. Okay, I just want to clarify that, because I think that's an important misconception that's been put out and tainting this conversation about how this actually works with a kill facility, with a live release facility. I think Councilman Kennedy is on the right track here with respect to, from my perspective, if what staff is looking for to move forward, I'd encourage you to try to get back into that conversation about a month-to-month operational contract if YVAS is willing to re-entertain that conversation. I think it's very clear that the city certainly needs the animal shelter, but the animal shelter also needs the city and the city's funding. I think that's becoming very clear on their end as well. So I'd encourage you to take that 10% bump as a new ceiling suggestion from the council and try to get under a month-to-month contract to get back to a normal operation. If you can, maybe you can't, I don't know. And then get the RFP out as soon as possible. I hope anybody that's watching understood what Councilman Kennedy is proposing, because I would support that, but I would not support another nickel over that. And I just put that in context. In the last 2 years, we've redone all 3 of our union contracts for police, for fire, and for our Teamsters. And not one of them got increases similar to what's being proposed here. Now, those are different contracts, but in the context of proposed increases in this environment, this is a bigger increase than what we've agreed to do for our union employees. And that's going to create its own heartburn. And I struggle with that myself, candidly. But we need to rectify this situation. And so from my perspective as one councilman, I am not interested in entertaining anything, even a nickel, over what Councilman Kennedy has proposed in that kind of 5-year layout.
Councilmember Aspletter, was that something that the council be able to cut loose extra funds to do? Honestly, the as you know, the PD budget has been drastically reduced from what we needed and down in order to make the city's goals.
I would say that, I mean, as the chair for now of the Budget and Finance Committee, we would figure that part out so that it does not come out of other areas of BPD, further reductions inside your budget. We will find a place to supplement that from outside of BPD's budget in with a budget amendment, should you be able to get that negotiated in. That would be what I would propose. That we work through Budget and Finance to make sure that clears, and we work with staff to fill that overage to your budget, so we're not taking it away from anything in your budget.
All right, we got a long line here, so it's going to be Mr. Lindley, Mr. Pittman, and then Mr. Neese.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, a few things. First of all, I'm certain that the last week has been crazy for the team. So I just want to say thanks for all the extra work that you guys put in to do what you had to do to get the facility where it needed to be and taking in animals and all that. So commendable to get that up and going as quickly as you could. As you can imagine, all of us got a lot of communication from the community. And to Councilmember Aspenletter's point, there's a lot of misinformation and different opinions about a lot of things. But the one undertone that I would say to me stood out was the community in general wanting to see a partnership continue. And that I think if you look back historically over the many, many, many years, I think 18 years or so, that the relationship has been there, that it has been a partnership for the vast majority of that time. Obviously, some challenges of late, and I would certainly love to see us get past that. I think, what I would say to Councilmember Kennedy's suggestion, I would be on board with his suggestion as far as the numbers go. I do agree that things like the question of the data questions, I should say, county numbers, city numbers, euthanasia data, all that kind of stuff, just so that we all as council and then the community at large can have better information about that is a very key thing for everybody. In the relationship, the other thing I would say is that I think that in my opinion, the RFP, and I think Councilmember Kennedy mentioned this, should not be changed in terms compared to the original one in terms of the scope of services. I think that the city does really need the full scope of the services. And the last one, I just want to reiterate and support what Councilmember Aspenleiter said. Should this agreement be able to be reached, that we do go back and figure out how to find the funds so that it doesn't come out of the police department budget. And, I don't think any of us know exactly what that looks like at the moment, but I think that is a very important thing. So, thanks.
Councilmember Pittman?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I think the RFP process is an appropriate way to proceed. There's a lot of organizations in our community that can all step up to work together to make this successful. I mentioned it a couple months ago that we started working on even looking at online licensing and that kind of thing. What concerns me is a statement you just made that we haven't been given back our computer with the information that we need to have right now to provide pet reunification. So it kind of worries me that for some reason that gap has happened. Can you expand on that at all?
So we have had some communication with them. We've sent a letter to them expressing the need to have that information back, which is contractually our information, and requesting that to be either somehow temporarily or somehow saved and then transferred to us. We have it, or if that doesn't work, access to the system would be acceptable too. But we do have correspondence out with them. I have not heard back from them yet.
Thank you.
Councilmember Neese?
Thank you. When did that communication go out?
Yes, was that yesterday? The day we sent the letter out for the data today.
Okay, so there hasn't had chance for them to respond yet. Okay. I appreciate that because I think that's what I was going to ask about. You mentioned about you're working on getting the numbers for, or something for, I don't know if it's equipment or numbers to scan all the animals chipped.
Mm-hmm. Not all animals are chipped, sir.
Many of the animals are chipped, right? And so do you guys are you able to scan them now, or do you have to get the equipment, or what's the ability of not being able to reunify an animal that may have been chipped?
Councilman, we have the ability to scan so we can get the chips. We have to call the company direct now because we don't have access to our system. So we have to call that company, and sometimes it's a long wait to get a hold of somebody to find out. And then we get a hold of somebody, we find out that the chip is not registered. So there's no information.
Okay. Do you have any lost animals now that you're holding, maintaining?
Right now I'm holding one animal that was taken out of the park. We've been able to get with the people and get them to use the websites and those types of things in order to get the animals back to the owners. And that's been working pretty good so far. But I mean, things change as the more animals come in. So, but we'll be able to house maybe 10 with the people I have. Okay. And if we can get those 5 hired to just do the sheltering piece, that would definitely help. But
okay.
That's a
So
process.
if you get 5 people in there, you'd be able to handle
I'm
more.
thinking we'd be able to take more animals in and somebody to watch them clean up, have to do that kind of thing.
Okay.
Need, so.
And is are you open to accept volunteers to come in and?
Yes, absolutely.
All right.
Right.
Great.
Absolutely.
All right. And then Mayor, I have a question for Andy, if you don't mind. Andy, I don't know if this is kind of off the cuff, but I thought you've discussed some of this earlier today. The proposal of Councilmember Kennedy is asking for a 10% increase and 5%, 5%, 5%. Is that something that we have the funds for? I understood we didn't. That was not fundable. Or is that only because it was out of the police department, not fundable?
Councilmember Neese, the 10% increase over the 26 amount would be about $12,000 more than what we had budgeted. So I think that's manageable in year one. 5% year increase each year thereafter, probably exceeding our tax revenue growth. But again, if that's the direction or where we land, I think we can probably make that work.
So for a negotiation for just a temporary month to month, a 10% increase for temporary month to month would be you saying that would work until the RFP process is out. And then we would have to negotiate a final amount during the RFP process with whoever happens to win the RFP.
So long as that final RFP amount didn't exceed, the $396,000, which would be the 10% increase. I think that is manageable.
I see. Okay.
Councilmember, may I address that real quick?
Yeah.
My understanding is on that month to month that the YVAS proposed back to us was if they were only willing to do a month to month without an end date stated, if we bumped up to the 45,000 mark for those month to months. If we were willing to stipulate to a 6-month contract, then that's when the 30,000 for the first 3 and the 45 for the second 3
Yeah,
kicked in.
no, I understand that. I think we're talking about something different since the RFP is done. We're not negotiating. We're just asking, I think if I understand correctly, we're asking to just try to negotiate one more time with them, a 10% increase on a month to month until the RFP has been reviewed, approved, and or not, whoever, it may be them, it may be someone else at that time. So I just want to make sure the funding wise, you think that first 10%, because that's really all that's going to be the portion of it is 10%. After that, the RFP will have to, I'm not so sure a 5% increase for the next 5 years is sustainable for the city. I wouldn't agree with that unless we went out for a mill levy and people wanted to vote for an animal control mill levy.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Neese. Mr. Boyette, you're next.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up for the council, not for these folks. But one option is this thing is never going to go away, the money that we have. And it always seems like we're losing money every year. We could put this on a ballot for up to 2 mills for the public to vote on this to support animal control. And let the public decide if they want to spend this amount of money or not. and November's coming, we could do that, up to 2 mills. And that money would be, set aside strictly for animal control. Just a thought out for one way to fund this.
Thank you, Mr. Boyette. Mr. O'Donnell?
Thank you. So you mentioned the hiring of 4 part-time people. Is it 4 or 5? Or?
I think it was five, sorry.
What's the cost of that? It hasn't happened yet, but what's the estimated cost of that?
We put it out at Councilmember, we put it out at $18 an hour, part-time. So it'd be 2 6-hour shifts a day and roughly an hour overlap in the middle or half-hour overlap in the middle. So we would cover the full day. The very quick numbers we ran for 4 was going to be $10,000 a month, a little over 10,000. So add the 5th one in, you're looking at around probably 12 and a half, maybe 13 for the month.
Yeah, I have 2 more points. Tom, when YVAS left the facility, from what I'm told, they took everything, including washing machines and fans and everything like that. What's the financial repercussion of things that you have to replace to go on with what
they have returned some things recently.
Okay.
A letter was sent to them telling them that these are things that you took that should not have been taken. And they did return all the bowls, every bowl for every kennel, because there's a special bowl that fits in those kennels. They returned all those the other day. So we got those back. We had a floor machine that they said they disposed of, and that was returned. It just came out of the blue. So I don't know when it got there, but the facilities guy told me, well, that's your floor machine. So I don't know what happened with that, but they said it was destroyed or thrown away, and then it showed up. So I have the floor machine back, but there's still a lot of things that were taken that probably shouldn't have been taken.
So I'm looking at what the financial repercussion is, things that you have to replace right now. What financial impact is there going to be?
Well, right now, today we ordered, they had these inserts they put in all the kennels. They cut out these big holes and then put inserts in. When they left, they took all the inserts. So those kennels are useless to us until we put something in there to divide those kennels back up. So today we ordered stuff to fix that. And that's like $1,500 because we're just putting in caps to plug them so we can use them as kennels. If the new RFP people come in and they want to put these things back in, they can do that because the holes will still be there, but they're just covered. But in the meantime, if we're going to have to use a shelter, we need to use the kennels. So, and that's why we had to get those fixed. Food expense, those kind of things, we have that because we're going to have animals, so we have to pay for that. There's a lot of stuff that I can't really put a financial. Yeah, they took all the veterinary tables out of the surgery room.
Right.
All those are gone. They took all the heated kennels out of the surgery room. Those are all gone. I don't know if we'll get that stuff back or not. I don't know if we've made a request for all that yet. I know legal's involved and they're making decisions on what they're going to do, but that's a decision they have to make.
But nevertheless, you're going to have to spend money to replace a lot of that
we're
stuff.
going to have the expense. That's
I was looking for.
About
One last thing is that city administrator Kevin Evland forwarded a letter relative to responding to a request by Councilmember Kennedy. And this is from Emily Jones' law firm, that YVAS's law firm. And in this letter, I wanted to point out one sentence. It says, YVAS is willing to engage in good faith discussion of either path, but is not in a position to absorb a reduction in price without a corresponding adjustment of scope or a sustainable funding mechanism. It seems to me that the city is in the same position. The city cannot, their language is not in a position to absorb a reduction.
Right.
We're not in a position to absorb an increase.
Right
there. So I reference that as to say that they're certainly aware of the problem as it stands right now.
Councilman, we had our last meeting with YVAS. We told them, what services could you alleviate from the contract to keep us at the 300 where we were? And that's what we thought was going to happen. When they'd go back, they'd put that together. But when they came back asking for more, and we just can't afford it. Can't afford to do it. So that's what kind of ended things.
Good.
So
all right. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Dr. Nicholson. Dr. Councilmember Nicholson.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, in the same vein, I was wondering about the scope of services and how many animals are involved. And I was hoping that the negotiators could open up the package and look at things item by item. But you've attempted that and that has failed. Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Aguirre.
Thank you. First, I want to just start my comments by recognizing that council has received numerous communications showing concern, anger, and confusion. So please know that you have been heard, and I'm obviously talking to the public here. Due to the volume of comments, I personally fell behind on engagement with them, but your message, the community message, is loud and clear that you are passionate about the work that YVAS is doing. So please know I see that and I value that. I don't know that I had a single duplicate email. Every single one was written from the heart. And I see that and recognize that. Moving forward, I wanted to also throw my support behind Councilmember Kennedy's proposal with a quick question. Have there been any numbers reported on a regular basis coming from YVAS in the past?
Usually we get numbers about once a year. I would request licensing numbers every month just to see how many licenses were sold, because that was a split between both of us. So I'd request that from them and they would provide that. Every year they're supposed to provide me with all the animals they bring in, who brings them in, how many there were, how many euthanasias, all that stuff. And as of the last 3 years, they'd stopped doing that. And it was, I think it's because our relationship was deteriorating and they were just not going to provide anything.
Right.
So I hate to say that, but that's what it felt like, that the last 3 years we weren't making it.
Since the incinerator
together,
incident.
So
before the incinerator incident?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
That didn't help, but yeah.
Understood. So with my support of Councilmember Kennedy's proposal, I would also ask for specific reportings, just as this. It's no different if the city is putting money into a project like YVAS, we need to see the return on our investment.
Which is, it's part of the contract. They're supposed to do that. I mean, it's a given. They're supposed to be doing that every month, providing those numbers. We're just not holding them accountable to do that. And I'll take the heat for that, because when our relationship fell apart, it was just kind of ugly to get information.
Yeah.
So,
well,
if I have access to the system, a lot of that stuff I can look up myself. I don't really need their help. But when they shut us off, we're out. We can't look at anything.
Understood. So all that being said, as was previously mentioned, misinformation has been shared across social media, across neighborhood conversations, across family members, and this casts distrust on system and process. And so I find this incredibly disappointing, and really pray and hope that we can come together in honesty and sincerity and with an idea of working together as a team. I think council wants nothing more than YVAS to continue with this RFP, but at a reasonable request. That's my comment.
Thank you. Councilmember Pittman.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. So I think this gives us a great opportunity with the RFP to have this conversation with our community on all of these numbers, all of these facets. I believe we have an incredible community that is stepping up and making sure that pets are returned home if possible. I think you could probably testify that most of the pets that you pick up are probably within a couple blocks of their home, and it's just a matter of knocking on some doors. So I would encourage you to spend more time trying to make sure that happens and less being brought into our care as well. I guess one final thing as we're going through this transition, there is a little money savings because we're not in the contracts. So that's probably offsetting some of this. But you'll take volunteers? Will you take donations of food, dog food, cat food, that kind of stuff? Okay. Perfect.
They're going to help.
Thank you.
Good. Councilmember Lindley.
Thanks, Mayor. This is more of a comment for council, and to Councilmember Boyette's point about the potential for a mill levy on this topic. And I would support that. However, I would not support that this fall. We have, I think in our community, a pretty important item that's going to be on the ballot that's wherever people stand, they're going to want to make their voices heard. And I think that maybe the spring would make better sense to do that because it would be kind of out of the limelight of that. So anyway, that's my comment on that.
Thank you. Councilmember Neese.
Thank you, Mayor. Tom, the facility you're at now, it's usable. You guys have been using it. Everything's cleaned up and everything is operational there, except for the few things that you have to fix up.
Yes,
okay. I guess my other recommendation, or if council agrees, is I know that YVAS has said some of their costs are more expensive because they're not in the facility. It's been cleaned up. I would say that we should offer them the ability to move back in the facility as part of the agreement. I don't know what the current rent was paying, what they were paying us at that, but that could be part of the negotiation. And so, with the caveat that the city, while YVAS is in there, would not use the incinerator for any drug paraphernalia or burning, destruction. It would still be used if it got repaired and approved by DEQ. It still could be used for incineration of animals, but not for drugs. And so I would put that on the table as well, that we would let them know that part of the contract, we would not use that for drug destruction.
Councilmember Kennedy.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things. I still want to reiterate that since this proposal is a proposal to go back to the staff, I still want to make sure the documentation is received by the city. For the last 3 years, we have no idea how many numbers and how many animals that we have seen from the city. And I think that's very important that the staff gets those numbers and we don't overlook them. That has to be a part of the contract. I would also remind everyone that when I was on the county commission, we had many dogs that we had impounded. That was over $500,000 worth of animals that we took in for the county, and that wasn't budgeted. And we spent a lot of money. So I think as we move forward with the RFP, as we move forward with hopefully a month-to-month contract, what we can do is make sure that that this whole process is moved forward. I would like still to reiterate that I'd like a couple members of the council to sit through the RFP process. We received so much mail, as many of you mentioned, and I think the council is tied into this, and we would ask the city administrator to have that as a part of his whole process on the RFP that's going to go forward. So that's my comments. Thank you.
You're welcome, Councilmember Kennedy. Councilmember Pittman.
One last thing, just as a specific to the RFP. I really think, I'm not sure how we delegated this authority, but I think we should be the ones issuing the licenses and controlling that information. And what we do with that money could offset some of these costs as well.
Okay. Anyone else before me? Go ahead, Mr. Aspinall.
I was just going to try to summarize in a bunch here what we had heard from a couple different angles at that.
Go, please.
So what I think combining all this together looks like. Trying to get back to the table, see if they can get back to the table on a month-to-month negotiation. That's not a under this 6-month early termination, like this is a month-to-month operational contract until the RFP is completed, potentially in November, operating under that 10% proposed increase over what the current, the last contracted year was. Budget and finance, if we can get there, we'll get together and try to find that money with our wizard budget guy, and we'll figure that out. In the RFP, I think we have set some clear expectations about what the caps on those contracts could look like. So whether we communicate that or not, I think that's in the public record at this point. So we might as well be transparent about what the limit is on that.
Excuse me, you talk about the RFP, correct?
Yes.
There should be a cap in it. We should publish what our max out of pocket can be.
In that though, that is not, to Councilman Lindley's point, that is not reducing the services that we were getting. That's a 10% increase, assuming that we are going to get the same services that we got before. And then lastly, to the point of Councilman Boyette's, putting this out for a 2 mil levy for animal control. I mean, I would support that, but I think Councilman Lindley's also correct. I don't think that's a good idea to try to do this fall. Maybe we can squeeze that into the spring elections for, the municipal elections or primaries, or, I think the school has an election in the spring. We can squeeze it into that ballot potentially. That would be the general summary, I think, of the situation.
Sounds.
And we need all the records.
We need records.
Yeah. And we need all the records
And the
reporting.
Use of the current facility.
Yes. And see, there you go. And allowing them to use that current facility with the 10% increase on top of it also, if they want to come back to the Monad facility.
So can I
Who
get
wrote all that down?
one clarification? Because online licensing was mentioned. We're ready to sign a contract so we can take over the online licensing, but that was a point of contention in negotiations of taking that on. So is that something that's on the table or off the table?
Well,
I just think this is one of the things, we have a few obligations, and one of them is controlling the licensing. So I don't see that as being on the table. We can split it with whoever we're cooperating with, and that's what's happening now. So I think that's something we should be in control of, though.
okay, I think we've reached consensus. Not bad.
Council,
Thank you, Mr. Aspenleiter. That was a great summary.
Yep, I think we've got clear direction, and we'll be reaching out tomorrow to YVAS. I'm sure they're listening tonight, so anticipate that we will be reaching out to them tomorrow and try to work on a month-to-month agreement. The RFP will go out tomorrow. We have got that pretty much finalized to go out, and we'll be working on that. And correct me if I'm wrong, but Councilmember Pittman, you were on the RFP process last time, is that correct?
I was.
Okay, so we'll get one or two more council members involved in the RFP process.
And you get your max number?
Got my max number, thanks to my budget and widget guy. Is that what he's, wizard guy? Okay.
Wizard budget guy, WBG. Thank you, gentlemen. Nice job. All right, we're going to move now. Thank you, gentlemen, for the reminder to public comment, and I did deserve that. So is public comment on item 4, animal sheltering services update. We'd be honored to hear your opinions. Please come forward, state your name and address or where you live, and take your 3 minutes.
Hi, my name is Lindsay Dillon. I've been a resident of Billings for 12 years, I believe. I just wanted to address the city council members and the mayor today, saying that when YVAS took over, they had to buy all brand new fencing for the outdoor parts of that shelter. Dogs were originally clipped to the wall when their kennels were being cleaned. So YVAS provided all of the fencing outdoors, hence why they took all of that fencing with them. YVAS had veterinary tables and veterinary supplies all donated to them or purchased through grants. So they were all part of our budgeting, all that good stuff. When YVAS first came into the building, there were just empty kennels and dishes. So YVAS provided the majority of the supplies, hence why they took all of that with them. YVAS already takes care of staffing, supplies, medical care, and more services. To outsource spay and neuter for dogs, it can cost up to $800. YVAS provides those services for our own animals as well as the City of Billings for only $125. I would also like to see reports as to how many animals ACO has euthanized for YVAS in 2026, as well as I highly recommend council members and anyone from the public to reach out to YVAS as far as intake reports, euthanasia, transfers, and our budgeting, as YVAS has always been transparent with their reports. Thank you.
Anyone else?
So, as I said before, Aubrey Kincaid, 6th and Yellowstone, been here since '09. Nearly as long as I've been alive, YVAS has been serving our community. That's 18 years and counting, hopefully. They're truly a foundational part of Billings and what makes this community great. Like, they've been providing services well above the status quo compared to other animal shelters, and without their services, it would be very different here. So just a little history lesson to contextualize some stuff. So back in September, their facility was used under authorization by the City of Billings to burn narcotic substances, including methamphetamine, fentanyl, cocaine, and the like. And despite many complaints from YVAS employees that the crematorium was letting smoke out containing all of these substances, it continued happening. And so that is why the facility was rendered unusable, why they've had to move multiple times, and why now they're operating out of donated spaces. Like, I know that Lionheart had let them have a space for a while. And so that's why they've needed a higher amount of money to run their services in order to make up for the gap in not having a facility that is purpose-built for an animal shelter. And so I understand that Billings is growing rapidly and that ultimately this is a monetary issue and that money will have to come from somewhere. But I believe that we should prioritize maintaining the services and the relationships that have made this community what it is. And so I believe it would be a huge mistake to cut that contract with YVAS and replace it with an animal control facility, because while animal control is a very crucial service, it is very different from a full animal shelter. Like, we cannot operate without an animal shelter, even if there is a bigger animal control facility there. So I think that concludes my statement. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for yours. Any other public comment?
Hello, it's 9 p.m., so I will make this quick. Hello and good evening. My name is Izzy, and I've been a lifelong citizen of Billings, just off Shiloh. I would like to voice a concern regarding the contract split between YVAS and the city that I have found not to be addressed quite yet, and that is regarding the officers of animal control and their well-being surrounding this issue. The first reason for concern is their workload coming off of this split. There are a total of 5 animal control officers that split their duties for the 7-day work week, often resulting in only 2 officers maximum serving the entire city of Billings, which consists of 185,000 people. But animal control doesn't just serve the people of Billings, they also serve the animals. If you take every owned pet in the city of Billings and stray animal, that's essentially double the population, meaning they're taking care of 350,000 beings. Why are 5 people expected to take on that number and workload with 0 help from the Yellowstone Valley Animal Shelter, who is merely beginning a streak of setting records of reuniting animals with their owners and adopting animals into homes that love them, reducing officers' workload and enabling them to helping those who truly need it and addressing actual emergencies? Another reason for concern is regarding the safety of the current facility on Monad. YVAS staff made the decision that it was unsafe to return to the building given the sheer amount of drugs that were burned. In buildings where methamphetamine is merely created, they often have to be demolished, and I'm struggling to understand why city officers are expected to work in an environment in which not only meth was burned in mass amounts, but also marijuana, cocaine, heroin, and even fentanyl. Despite this, animal control was not allowed to miss a day of work in that building. My third issue is, what are taxpayers funding if animal control isn't even picking up animals? City officers do a great job when it comes to handling public safety, so why does public safety seem to fall where animals begin? On the 4th of July alone, nearly a dozen citizens had reported to YVAS that city phone operators had told members of the public to release stray dogs back outside. This is not what the hardworking people of Billings want to be funding, and that has been voiced very publicly both on social media and to individual council members. Billings can be rowdy and divided in opinion, but it is clear that when it comes to animals of the community, the cries for the many and the shelter, the cries of the many for justice for the shelter and their services is unmatched. YVAS is unequivocally the best option. We recently celebrated America's 250th birthday. Woo, that's 250 years of people governing through democracy. The people have spoken, and the people want YVAS. Just because the city can't keep up with its own inflation doesn't mean the public needs to bear the brunt of it through a lack of a functioning shelter that serves the community as well as YVAS. Thank you.
Further public comment?
Hello, my name is Juanita Rathbun. I've been living in Billings now for a long time, since 1988, and I was here before YVAS was the animal shelter, and I can clearly state that what was available then was woefully inadequate. The city, and now it is much better, what YVAS was offering until the end of June, was much better than what was available before they existed. And the city does need an animal shelter. I think it's very obvious to all of us what happens when there isn't an animal shelter. Look at the situation on some of the reservations. And I mean, we just need an animal shelter. So I think it's very important that this get resolved quickly. I think it's very obvious based on all of the letters that the city has received that this is a very emotional issue for residents of the city of Billings. And I understand that it's a budgetary issue, but I think that some sort of resolution needs to be come to quickly. The longer we wait, the more messed up the situation is going to become. And seriously, to have citizens being told to release stray animals is not an acceptable solution, especially over the 4th of July with all of the fireworks. And that's just an irresponsible solution on behalf of the city. So I hope that this can be resolved quickly, but that's all.
Further public comment? All right, thank you, folks. Seeing none, we'll move up to any upcoming agenda items of council interest. Mr. Iflin?
So make it brief. So we do have on Wednesday at 11 o'clock a special work session, part 3 of the domestic violence here in the council chambers. And then I did want to mention, so most of you have heard about Yellowstone County and the damage that caused to their building. They are starting to move in on our 3rd floor, and we're working out a lease agreement with them that kind of mirrors what they left in February with an escalator in there. So I will be bringing that back to council as soon as we get that through legal and over to the county to ratify. So that, look for that on an upcoming agenda, but we are moving forward. They are moving into third floor and we're working on those details.
Great, thank you. Any council discussion? Oh, yes, okay. Who goes first? Mr. Boyette?
Well, I put a copy of an initiative on everybody's table there that I'd like to bring for a vote on next Monday for the consolidation of the 3 statutory TIF advisory boards into one. And you'll see that documentation. I did some research and I think it's pretty clear.
Thank you, Mr. Boyette. Mr. Lindley?
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I wanted to just make a comment about the Technology Advisory Commission that we had gotten going. And at the moment, unfortunately, we don't have enough people to round it out. So what I don't want to see, which we talked about and we have the Operations Committee take a look at, is have a commission that's just got a couple people on it and just sits there. So what I would say, first of all, thank you to the people that have applied and been appointed on there. That's fantastic. But I would say and ask, and I'll ask this publicly in other arenas as well, for anybody else that might want to serve, to apply. And if we don't get a minimum of, in my opinion, 5 members by the end of July, I'm going to request that we go ahead and set that aside, because I just think that it's definitely not in the spirit of what we're trying to do to make sure we keep these things full.
All right, thank you, Mr. Lindley. Mr. Aspenlander.
Budget and Finance, we are not going to meet in July because Andy assures me that we are on budget with being 2 weeks in or 5 days into the budget. We are on track for the rest of the year.
Bless you.
So no Budget and Finance in July. We'll meet in August after we get the information from Department of Revenue on assessments and are working towards finalizing our budget. So we're going to eliminate the Budget and Finance meeting on there. And lastly, probably what Roy's looking at me sideways about, I'm going to step off of Budget and Finance, and Councilman Lindley is going to take my place with the mayor's action. So I will be stepping away from that and floating around.
Floating around.
Now, be the floater.
Mr. Neese was going to ask you about YVAS.
Yeah, what about the money that we need to talk about for YVAS and work with finance on that? Shouldn't that be a budget committee discussion? And should we meet quickly on that?
I don't think we have necessarily anything to try to find until we get to a contract. So, yeah, or even a month-to-month agreement. I don't think we have anything to find find until we get there.
Fine.
If we get there, then
I'm good, because Andy said we have that what we have said for the month-to-month. That'd be fine. All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Excuse me. All right. Hey, Councilmember Kennedy. I just love Zoom meetings.
Thank you. I just wanted to let you know I will not be there for the Wednesday meeting. Thank you.
You will be missed, sir. For the final time tonight, I'm going to open the hearing up to the meeting up to public comment, this time on non-agenda items. And I will recognize our delegation from the Small Business Administration.
Yes.
Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor, council members. Thank you all for the opportunity. We are the Small Business Administration Office of Disaster Recovery. I'm Tana Moorhead. This is Cassandra Jones. We call her Cash. And we're here in response to the disaster that took place December 2025. The Crow Agency was impacted, so they requested a disaster declaration in which we're serving and offering physical damage, physical disaster loan, and also economic injury disaster loans. For 3 counties, which are contiguous, it is Bighorn, Yellowstone, and Carbon, in which we're also offering the economic injury disaster loan. So we're asking that you all share this information, perhaps on your website, your social media channels, to your districts, anybody you know who has a business. We are offering this disaster loan program to those, of course, who are impacted. I do have several packets here, if I may leave them with you to share with your constituents.
Just leave me with Mr. Iflin there.
Okay.
Thank you.
To share with your constituents so that they may reach out to us. The deadline for the economic injury is March 7th, 2027. And still, we want to encourage all those to apply because sometimes with businesses, it is a process, not a long process, but we want to help everyone as expeditiously as we possibly can. And that is it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Other comment?
Mr. Mayor, council members, administration, my name is Paul Clark, Ward 1. I would like to bring up some incidents that have happened down in South Park. As you all have heard, the Dino Mart was, they attempted a robbery. Apparently it didn't go right on the perpetrator. And he ran to the gazebo bleeding and was called emergency services. They got a hold of him and they took care of this person. These are just minor little incidences that happen in the South Park area. Just one a day, maybe more, I'm not sure. But one of the things that we've been doing is recreation has been taking out trees. And I'm suspect as why are we doing that? Is it to, I can't remember the administrator's name. I think it's Gavin. Gavin has the sources and resources to pin us all if we're carrying a phone or not. And maybe that's what it was, is Big Brother's watching to see why are we taking out the trees in city parks. Let me tell you that some of them trees are well over 80 years old, mature. Nothing wrong with them. We all like to climb trees, especially if you're a kid, or like to see a bird or a squirrel use it. So when you take out that many trees and you can't get an answer because I don't need to know basis, apparently, I'd just like to remind them that we are still the public and we do use that park. It would be a little bit more advantageous to give us an answer instead of saying, it's no concern of yours, you're no one. Well, really, I use that park. I even went in there to swim at South Pool. Very cold. It does remind you when you were 10 years old trying to get your swimming lessons real quick. But it was there. It's resourceful. There are a lot of things that need to be done to that park. And the pool is definitely going to be one. So let's not lose that. If we're going to take large trees out, let's plant 2 more instead. But to just give me no answer as it's none of my business. No, it is our business. And I would like some clarification on why we were taking out very healthy trees, not rotten, 60-year rings. Just some clarification. That's what I got. I will always try to be the voice of the South Side, whether it's good or bad. I've got to get in here and get my piece in. I can see we're packed, we're just door to door breaking it in. But this is what public comment is about. You have to get involved. And that's what I got. Thank you.
Seeing nobody rising to the podium, I'll take it that public comment has ended. And without objection, I will call us adjourned. There's no objection. We're adjourned.